man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Welcome in, everybody. It is good to see everyone. It has been a long week. My weeks are getting compressed because I'm going to Ireland for a wedding soon with my good friend Adam. If you haven't seen our history videos, you should check them all out. They're all awesome. And he's getting married over there where he lives in Ireland. So I'm going to go over and see it. Fantastic. So that also means no live streams. So we're going to miss a couple of live streams. But I will have videos released probably, well, we'll see. We'll see how things play out. But probably at least one per week. I'll schedule while we're gone. And yeah, there won't be no content. There will be some content. And I'll have the book available for pre-order before we leave. I got to work all that out. Hopefully by the end of this weekend, I got to check my list of things that I'm supposed to be doing and get all that worked out. All right. Let's see what we got. We have Sam Pell in a glass bottle because that's what they had. For whatever reason, they had glass bottles this time. So I've got glass bottle of Sam Pell, and we've got a Muppet cup. Why don't we just pour some Sam Pell into the Muppet cup right here, live, because we can, because it's my stream and I get to do what I want. And you get to watch and enjoy and listen to the lovely fizzies of Sam Pell. And I've got some tea. This is my London Fog, which Sanjuro got me in my Dead Man's cup here. And then I've got some spice tea, earth tea, in my captain's mug. So it's Yar all the way. And I am preparing, or I have been preparing, for the Matrix video, which will be a live stream, of course, because it would really, if somebody does like a video on the Matrix and doesn't let you interact live, I got questions. How much of the Matrix are they into? I, of course, am going to do an extravaganza thanks to Jesse's excellent work. So on Sunday at this very time, there will be Matrix. We'll finally get it done. How far into the whole thing we'll get, I don't know. It's a long outline. It's a very long outline. I've worked on for like a year and a half or something insane. So, and I've been adding to it and, getting it ready. So hopefully I'll be able to deliver it on Sunday. That's part of why this is, I would call this an easy live stream for me. I wasn't going to do any hard topics because I've been buried in Matrix, absolutely buried in the Matrix. It's been an interesting week. Jonathan Peugeot came out with a rather interesting video about being radicalized by the Charlie Kirk assassination. I think you're starting to see patterns of breakdown right? And where people were stuck in patterns and didn't know what patterns they were stuck in and are now seeing those patterns play out differently. And it's like, oh yeah, weren't doing what you thought you were doing. Those people that you thought were a certain way weren't that way, were they? And I kind of hinted to this in my Kairos live stream that that's what was going to happen. And yeah, it's happening all over the place. It's also an indication that, these people, maybe they don't know what they're talking about quite so well as they think. If you don't know the people around you and what you're wrapped up in, it's all about patterns, baby. It's all about patterns. So let's speaking of patterns, let's see if I can manage to follow my pattern. We've got our Taleb book here. So we love Taleb. Let's flip to a random page, grab an aphorism, and see what we get. You can be certain that the head of a corporation has a lot to worry about when he announces publicly there is nothing to worry about. Yes, that works because attention. The world is attention. Right? Attention is neither negative nor positive. Attention could be either. And once you understand that, patterns of the world become much more clear. Right? You can't use things like a lack of support means you're against. But you can use things like saying there's nothing to worry about means that there was something to worry about or still is something to worry about. That's for sure. And once you kind of understand how those asymmetries work, life gets a lot easier for you. Life gets a lot easier for you. So let's jump in patterns. Let's jump into patterns. Sleep, work, eat, growth, decay. These are all patterns. They're different patterns. And if you treat them as such, you go to bed at the same time every day and you wake up at the same time every day, your life will improve because the patterns are bigger than you and they can help to gird you, to strengthen you, to scaffold you into being a better you. It also helps you measure things, right? If you know you wake up at the same time every morning and you don't wake up at that time, maybe you're sick, right? Or maybe you're stressed. This is why patterns are so important. And liturgies are types of patterns, but not all patterns are liturgies. Deep confusion of the binary thinkers, because of course they'd have to be the same thing because they only have two thoughts in their head at once. I know they're not dualists because they tell me so all the time, but also they're definitely dualists and they don't know the difference. That's what happens when you're stupid. Patterns are the start of structures. And they are the thing that sets up momentum. And so knowing what the pattern is very important. So I remember a number of years ago, my buddy and I were talking about stocks. It had to be 15 years ago now. And I said, hey, not for nothing, Intel and AMD trade in parity with one another. So if one goes down and the other one's going up, that's usually a buying opportunity, which had been true for, I think, 6 years at that point or something. They were, they weren't trading at the same dollar amount, but they were trading in parity. One went up, the other one, right? So if AMD had bad news, right, they're both in the chip sector. So they were good, and they were the two giants. They're still the two giants, right? There's really only two chip companies that make desktop chips. NVIDIA will enter that market soon enough. Another pattern. So at that time, Jim Cramer, with his show on CNBC, was saying AMD is a sell. I was like, are you high? They make the best chips on the market. They always did. They always outcompeted with Intel in almost every market. Not the super high-end server market, but every other market. They always had the better, faster chips. Well, it turns out that the reason why AMD was going to go down, and I didn't obviously know this at the time, was because the mutual funds, the big funds that held AMD, that were propping up the stock, that prop up all stocks actually, they were cycling out of AMD because they needed to dump some of their chip stocks for rebalancing. And that was a process that's going to continue for like 2 years because mutual funds can only sell once a quarter, just part of their rules. Like that's right. And it might have been ETFs too, but mutual funds was a big one at the time. And so there was a fund cycle that I didn't know about. It was part of a momentum of the thing that drives the chip prices when they're trading at multiples. So if you have a company in the stock market that's not trading at a multiple, that's because none of the big institutions own it. Once big institutions own things you can trade at multiples, they don't care. They'll give you a few shekels. You make $100,000. That's nothing to them. They sneeze $100,000 and don't even notice. So that pattern was, I didn't see it. I didn't even know about that particular pattern at the time. That's actually how I learned about that pattern. But that momentum of them moving out of the stock, dumping a little bit each quarter for the next 8 quarters, or maybe it was more than that, but it was at least 2 years, just dumping a little bit of their holdings drives the stock price down and drives the stock price down and drives it. Now, they don't care that they're driving the stock price down. They bought the stock so long ago that they're making money either way. But they also don't want to depress it or cause a crash because they still got to sell a lot. So they do it over a very long period of time because they're large. It's how momentum works. See my video on momentum, right? Patterns are part of that. The pattern that sets up around, we're going to rotate out of this sector into that sector. That's part of the pattern. The implementation in that case was we're rotating out of AMD. I don't think they're rotating out of Intel, by the way. Or they might have dumped a little bit of Intel, but they're going for a different sector. So they had to dump something. Well, you don't dump the quote big player Intel, whatever. They're the big players still, unfortunately, for all of us. We're suffering with them forever, apparently. But that pattern gives you a safe way to interact with something bigger than you, in this case, the stock market. Oh, you can see that pattern unfolding. Jim Cramer did. I just didn't listen to him. He didn't understand what his argument was. He just said, they're going down. He can't say, I know all these guys and they're telling me that they're changing sectors. And he, as a hedge fund manager, knew what that meant and how that would likely be implemented. He was right. If you don't know about that pattern, if you aren't part of that pattern, if you don't have a pattern that protects you from that pattern, which you can, you won't see it coming and it won't be safe to participate. So my buddy bought a bunch of AMD stock, lost his shirt. It just kept going down for 2 straight years. Rightly blamed me. Was kind of my fault. That's true. And I learned a valuable lesson because that's how you learn. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. And it's that pattern that I didn't know about. And I wasn't in the stock. I didn't have any money for stocks back then. Not that particular set of years anyway. And the thing is, too, we recognize these patterns because they help us to participate. When we participate in something like church, there's a liturgy. Those are patterns, right? Right. That's how you participate in the church, which is bigger than just you. Right. How do you participate in a business? Well, you get a title and you do your job. You don't do other people's jobs. That would be out of the pattern. Sometimes you might have to pitch in or help or take over, whatever, but there's a pattern there. Patterns aren't some strict, you will do it this way all the time. Excuse me. Patterns are very subtle and they're very regular. And when you're out of pattern, the fact that you were in a pattern and you have pattern momentum means that you're more likely to come back into the pattern than you are to just spin out. It can be very useful for things like eating and sleeping and working. And because of all this, it gives us a cohesion, a coherence, a comprehension to the world as such. The whole world has a comprehension because of patterns. Patterns are the thing that we comprehend. So we like patterns. That's why we like music. Music is full of different patterns. And all of these patterns come together, weave together to make other patterns that people often refer to are not there. They used to do this thing called dithering on the computer to make colors appear that were not being displayed. You can do that in any art, by the way, and dithering happens whether you want it to or not. So you have to be careful how you place your dots on the screen. And music has the same thing. You have to be careful what instruments you play and how you play them in concert with one another, because those patterns are there. And patterns at different layers, right? You have the overall movement of the song, you have the sub movements of the song, you have things like the chorus that recur over and over. These are all different patterns, melody, harmony. Those are different. Those are patterns done differently, expressed differently, different interactions. Those layers sit on top of one another and interact with one another and create more layers. And those simple patterns from the individual instruments create these complex patterns. They produce more complex patterns. Music is the best example of this. Everybody's familiar with this. And of course, there's good patterns and there's bad patterns. There's good music and there's bad music. And the thing is, Dr. John Vervaeke talks about combinatorial explosion and whatever. Do you want to resolve combinatorial explosion? Patterns. That's what resolves it. That's what collapses it. That's what holds things together so that you know which things go with which things. And maybe something is freeloading. Maybe that's okay, because patterns can take a little bit of jostling. They're not delicate. And the thing about patterns and our ability to sense patterns is that gives us the sense of what goes together and what doesn't and how. Because one of the problems of symbolic thinking and symbolism in general is that you can just slap two things together. We've been doing that with the language for quite some time. You cannot be an agnostic atheist just because you can say those two words one right after the other. There's a fundamental conflict. If you say something like the really real, you haven't actually conveyed any data, information, or really anything. You've just repeated the same root word twice, once in a slightly different form. That is not a helpful, useful thing to do. It is out of the pattern of proper communication in language. A language is a codified set of patterns that allows us to communicate clearly with one another. Now, the clarity of language is pretty freaking lame at the end of the day, but it's there nonetheless. And so feeding things together does not a pattern make. And in fact, if you're bad at patterns, if you're bad at sensing patterns, if you're bad at realizing patterns, if you're bad at participating in patterns, you'll fall prey to those giving you bad patterns, bad connections, and telling you, oh, no, this is what I see. This is the pattern. And a lot of people are falling for that, especially on the internet. A lot of people get stuck into the Curtis Yarvins of the world, or, even the Hassan Pikers of the world. What a clown that guy is. Asmongold Gold. I mean, these guys, and they're all great guys, I'm sure, whatever. But also, there's lots of things that are happening in the world, and just calling them all patterns and saying, aha, and that means this, and being wrong over and over and over and over again doesn't seem to fix this for some reason, because people don't know a good pattern from a bad pattern, but they have a deep sense internally that they like patterns, that patterns are good. And so they want those patterns. They desperately want those patterns. Everybody wants the patterns because they feel good, just like music. One moment. I have a pattern of runny nose for some reason. There we go. That's 1,000 times better. You'd think I ate spicy food, but I did not. These patterns that unfold are everywhere, and they create chaos. unless you can tell the good patterns from the bad patterns. And that's what sensing patterns is all about. You have to be able to tell when someone's telling you something that cannot be true. And the number of people saying things that are non-tautological or anti-tautological is amazing. They're contradictions in their statement. Whereas tautologies are perfectly consistent. And that's one of the problems. People can't even see inconsistency. They can't see paradox. They can't see contradiction as a bad thing. They go, oh, a contradiction, cool. It's like, no, contradiction means you're missing something. That's what it means. It doesn't mean anything else. We don't live in a world of contradiction. By definition, the purpose of a contradiction is to show you that you're missing something. You can sit there and say, oh, Meno's paradox all day long. Yeah, that was for very young people to engage with and understand that the world is bigger than mere binary logic. And because not all patterns are good, and not all goodness is in patterns, what else would a miracle be? That isn't a paradox. That's an asymmetry, which points to a third thing. Hierarchy is real. You have to be able to identify that not all patterns are good and not all goodness is in patterns. And those aren't conflicting in any way, shape, or form. They are orthogonal and complementary and cooperative to one another. If you can't recognize that, that's because you can't cooperate in the world. And life is going to be harder for you than it needs to be. Just that simple. There's no reason to get caught up with, ooh, contradictions, ooh, paradoxes, or, oh, listen to this guy, oh, opponent processing. Okay. There's no processing by definition if you're in opposition. Opposition leads to war. You know what else it leads to? Oh, no, just war. Oops. Don't do that. There's no reason to. Cut it out. It's not hard. You could be better. And people don't understand that the pattern brings you up and out or down and out. Be careful about the down and out one. You can, if you have a pattern, or if you can see other people's patterns, you can measure whether or not you're going up or down. That's actually not that hard. And you can see if you're staying still, because there's always three. There's never, that's why I know there's no contradictions. There's always three things. There's never two things. That didn't happen. Thank goodness. It'd be nihilism all the way down. And that's the problem. People don't realize there's an asymmetry to the world, and that asymmetry is vertical. We'll talk about vertical causality. I don't think there's much hope for those people, but I guess they're going to keep talking like that forever anyway, so might as well get used to it. And realize there's probably not any hope for them because they're talking that way and they still don't get it. It's fine. Seems like they're closer, but actually they're not. They're still stuck in a duality and rejecting the implications of that third thing. If vertical causality exists, where did it come from? Science only explains the horizontal. Oops. And so you need to know about that asymmetry with patterns. You need to know patterns should draw you up and out so that the contradictions don't exist. You see a contradiction, you're not being drawn up and out. Not that hard. And the thing about patterns is that while you can explore within a pattern or use a pattern to explore, and that's still not a contradiction, that is a trust relationship in both cases. If you're exploring inside a pattern, that's a trust relationship. If you're using a pattern to do an exploration of a space, That's a trust relationship. Patterns are what create trust. Everyone's talking about trust. They're all morons. I don't know why they're morons. This isn't that hard. It is for them. I'm sorry to hear that. Glad I don't have that problem. Patterns create trust. Right? That's why miracles rely on faith, because they don't follow a pattern. See how easy this is? It's really easy. Guys make it really hard. It's really easy. Super easy. Exploring outside of a pattern takes daring. And these are artists, right? They mix patterns and no patterns. They think and talk in negative space, and yeah. But exploring outside of the pattern involves unknown risk. And where do you go? What do you find there when you're outside the pattern? Well, that's where the greatest gold is to be found. But the problem is, rarely. Most people who go out the pattern looking for something will never find anything at all. And by most, I mean almost everybody, and definitely you. But now at least we have a way to understand trust. And it's not so much that you trust the pattern to recur perfectly the way you expect every time, but you trust the pattern to be there. And not all patterns are going to be there. Some patterns are temporary, so you have to know. Right? I just see patterns, so I can say, oh, that's a temporary pattern. I trust that that will go away soon. And I trust that I either know when or I don't know when. Still trust. No faith required. And when you're growing, we'll say through a pattern, right? Or as the result of a pattern, or because of interaction with a pattern, because you're cooperating with a pattern, that growth is slow. And that can be a good thing, right? You can trust that if you go to school every day, by the end of the semester, you will have learned something. Maybe not what the teacher was teaching, maybe not what's in the curriculum, but you'll learn something. And that's a good thing. Growth outside the pattern is explosive. You can study this phenomena if you just read the biographies, or better yet, autobiographies of people who've made $1 million, or better yet, made $10 million, or you can read How I Lost $1 Million or How to Lose $1 Million. Excellent book. Taleb recommends it. Can't remember the author. I have it somewhere, although I think it's in the shed. You will notice that they bucked the trend. They went outside of conventional wisdom. What is conventional? Conventional wisdom is pattern, right? And their growth was explosive, right? They made $1 million in 6 months or a year or whatever it was. Yeah, that's where you get the explosive growth. It's also super dangerous, because when you're outside of the pattern, you have nothing to rely on. And much like the greatest gold, you're more likely to just get hurt in the explosion rather than ride the wave. Best to go with the pattern. And patterns are made up of relationships. That's how they exist. And those relationships that the patterns are made up with have qualities. You cannot truly reduce them to propositions and procedures. Procedures are an approximation of a pattern, and that might be required to sort of get started with the pattern before you can see it, is just to follow the procedure over and over again until you get into the flow state that everybody keeps talking about. That's what it's for. The flow state is a transition from procedure to pattern. That's what it is. And there's other features to it, we'll say, or other advantages to it. But the mechanism is simply understanding the procedure as a pattern. And then you can get rid of the procedure entirely. Procedures are just stepping stones. When you can't or don't do that, you're stuck in an intimacy crisis because you don't understand the quality of a relationship. So you can't make the transition of low quality, flat relationships called procedures into high quality relationships called patterns. It's a big problem. But you need procedures, right? You got to learn, you've got to grow, you've got to follow the procedure to see if you can become part of the pattern, cooperate with the pattern. Maybe you'll never see the pattern, but you'll just be successful over and over again. If you listen to any of these guys like Alex Hormozi, they'll just tell you, like, just follow the procedures, right? Just follow this stuff, right? And then that will work for certain people, and it won't work for most people, by the way, right? If you start the procedure and over time you can get a sense for the pattern, then boom, you have the poetic way of informing the world. You'll just be successful at that thing as the pattern, as the procedure graduates into a pattern. That's how the world works. It works on patterns. And not every pattern is a pattern that you can participate with. Not every pattern is a pattern that you can see. You don't need to see a pattern to participate in it and be successful. Not required. That's actually why I don't say, oh, these guys selling these methods should all go away. No, they're going to work for a certain number of people who are disciplined enough, who can follow a pattern for their life and then update it with a set of procedures and maybe add a few more patterns through those procedures and learn. You can whine about the Prussian school system or whatever all day long, but actually it works. The problem isn't the Prussian school system. The problem is what we took out. See the work of Dale Farron. And the thing is, consequences are the result of patterns. Things that are stuck together, they're related, and therefore outside of your control. They're not optional. Certain things go together. And that's where trade-offs come from. And when people divide up the world using the sciencey tools, logic, reason, and rationality, among other reprehensible flat world tools that are useful but limited, very limited, you get the idea that you can just carve the world up and it doesn't really matter, but you don't know what you're carving up and what you're trading off. We very much in our world made a trade. People might call it a deal with the devil. We now have the sum total of human knowledge in the palm of our hand. The cost is the mirror. Trade-offs, indeed. There was no other way to do that. Oh, and all this electromagnetic interference and the inevitability of self-driving cars, maybe. Or at least the attempt to build them. AI itself, once you have all the important information stored electronically, now you can build an AI. If you leave it all in printed books, the AI can't get it. See, these things are linked. Is AI coming for your job? Is that inevitable? Because the pattern? Because things are stuck together? Is social media inevitable when you tried to give everybody the sum total of human knowledge in the palm of their hand in real time at their request? Why, yes. Yes, it was. People can say otherwise, but I was there. Social network stuff was happening long before the web existed. Long before. That was the first and best use of the computer systems. Once the internet became a thing, people used it to communicate with one another more than they used it for finding information. In fact, In order to build the systems like Gopher and Usenet and Archie that were the early systems, IRC, you needed to have communication systems like IRC to coordinate the effort to build these other projects. Social media came first because it's inevitable. It's a trade-off. You want to have all this information available for people, you need to put it in electronic form. You want to put it in electronic form, you're going to have something like AI eventually. There's no way around that. It's not an optional pattern once you've made that first bad decision. The slippery slope is real, only it ain't a slope. It's way worse. This is why they talk about the so-called tragedy of the commons. I always found this one of those moments where I was like, here's a bunch of smart people. Why are they this dumb? And yet they are. You cannot have a commons of the people without a government. You can't. The two things can't exist apart from one another. In fact, there's no reason for a government if you don't have commons. And if you have a quote commons, someone or something has to manage it, hence government. It's not that hard, really. It's just you have to think at scale, right? The scale of one person interacting with another doesn't work. I have a video about this, by the way, The Trick of Socialism, right? And so there is no tragedy of the commons. It's a made-up problem in some fantasy brain of some half-wit or nitwit who thought for some reason that you could separate having something in common from a management structure. I don't know how anybody came to that conclusion or why this isn't obviously retarded, but apparently a lot of very smart people, allegedly, that's what they ran into. Something has to manage the commons. The tragedy of the commons is a lie told by socialists to help hide that government is not optional. It's part of the pattern of having a culture, having people together, having things in common. If you have things in common, you need a government to manage them once your size reaches a certain threshold. And there's many governments. There's the United States, we've got local government, just city or town, right? We've got county government, we've got state government, and we've got federal government. Federal government operates completely differently from all the other governments, by the way. And those governments take different forms. Some of the states are commonwealths. Some of them are not commonwealth. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I mostly grew up there. Excuse me. Scale often reveals patterns. The pattern of a family is more easily seen at another scale, like the government. That's why people say, oh, socialism operates like a family. Yeah, well, socialism can operate at the scale of a family. Absolutely, it can. It just can't operate at any other scale. So that pattern works great at one scale. And also, socialism is a form of government, and so not an economic system. So you can't compare it to capitalism because capitalism is a form of government. It's an economic system. You'd think people would have caught that too. But people are really dumb, easily fooled by sorcerers and charlatans. I have a live stream on charlatans. Karl Marx was a grade A charlatan, that's for sure. These patterns show up, but they're easier to see. Oh, somebody governs the family. Otherwise, you have a terrible family life. Just going to tell you right now, like if your father's drunk and your mother's a drug addict, no one's governing the family, going to be chaotic, going to have a rough time. Some people are going to come out of that really strong, and most people are going to get wiped out. Just going to tell you. But we don't take that failure of the drunken father and scale it up to the drunken governor, because there is an equivalent. And we talk about this. We go like, well, that guy's drunk on power once he got elected. Drunk on power. Why would you use that analogy? That makes it makes perfect sense. The government is the family of a larger set. Right. But governor is the father of the family of that set. That's all. Patterns really easy to see, actually. Governance, it's a technical term, is required for groups, any groups. Different forms of governance, like socialism, work at different scales. Socialism only works at the personal scale where you're face to face with and have, we'll say, enforced relationship with the people. Otherwise, socialism fails completely. Sorry, there's lots of evidence. You need the contrast to see. So sometimes these patterns are easier to see at a different scale. And the question you should be asking yourself, because reality is fractal in nature, self-similar fractal to be precise. Where is that pattern for me? Or where is the pattern that I see up there or down there? Because patterns operate at scale. And some patterns are scale invariant, and not all are. Some patterns are not scale invariant. They die at different scales. It's good to know. There's a pattern to my live streams. It's not merely every Friday. It's not pirates. It's not a combination of pirate theme every Friday. It's not all that plus this monologue. It's not the set with the new lighting. Tell me if you like my new lighting. Plus the time, plus the place, plus the dress, plus the topic. Any of those could be changed, and they have changed over time, right? And perhaps only one for any given live stream. Like, you can't add too many things or subtract too many things at once. You can't just do this on a Wednesday, and right? But you'd still identify the pattern. So if I just switch to Wednesday, you'd probably identify it pretty easily. But if I change too many things at once, I'm out of pattern, and the pattern breaks. But again, patterns are how things are resilient, because I can change one or two things here and there. I can change the lighting. I can get new mugs when I go to Pirate Island. It doesn't really matter that it's a glass bottle instead of a plastic one this time. I don't know why the stores have glass bottles right now. That's common this season, though, for Sam Pell. Might be a change in Europe. We should check it out. But the pattern keeps it resilient. You know I'm going to be here Friday when I can, except the next 2 weeks. You know that if I say I'm going to have a live stream, because I've never missed an announced live stream, like on Sunday with the Matrix, you know it's going to be there, right? These are patterns that you can trust. Trust happens through patterns. Somebody should tell Jordan Hall. Maybe he could figure it out. It's not that hard. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. The thing is, patterns bring you that resilience. They bring you that strength. They bring you that participation, that ability to interact. Manners are ways to figure out what pattern of interaction you can have with someone else. We'll be doing stuff on manners. Now, I have to go to Ireland, so it won't be this month. I hope that Noah's working on it. I'm sure he's doing something. And we should get that rolling maybe next month. I do have to get the book up on the website and all that stuff, but we should get that done in the next week here before I leave. And then pre-orders, right? And then we'll start shipping in about a month, or maybe a little longer. We'll see. We'll see what the printer wants to do. Right now, though, we're living in a time of less pattern, both in our ability to recognize pattern, which is the loss of the poetic way of informing the world. See the model video, the knowledge engine video. It's very important. And our rebellion against all hierarchy, right? For different reasons, perhaps, but with the same result, right? So if you're born into the world without the way of poetically informing the world, because you were kind of like left on your own and you just kind of learned your own patterns and not necessarily the most important ones, or maybe you played too many video games. I have another video game reality video coming out. That'll be released while I'm gone. It's going to be a problem, right? You won't know how to tell a good pattern from bad. What's wrong with living in my mom's basement, eating Cheetos and playing video games all day? I don't understand. We got plenty of money. What's wrong with doing nothing but working from home? No contrast. You can't see. Well-known problem with working from home, by the way. That's why I always had an office. I have an office now. I've always had an office. Always, always, always. Never made that mistake. It's a bad mistake to make. It really screw you up. I had a roommate years ago. He had the back room. The back room was an enclosed 3-season porch. And it wasn't very big. It's just big enough for his double bed. And you could walk around it kind of. At the foot of the bed, you had more space, but no, it's a very narrow room with a closet. It had a closet. It was technically a bedroom. And we had a huge house. It was, everything else but the house is huge, right? It's big. The other 2 bedrooms are a little small, but we had an eat-in size kitchen, chef's kitchen. Then we had a dining room, a full-size dining room, and then we had a living room. So technically, 3 bedrooms, 3 people, 3 big rooms. Each one of us could be in a different big room, not bothering the other 2. Not a problem. Now, we had all the computers in the dining room, and then if you were going from the kitchen to the living room, which kind of had to, you could either go out down the hall, which was nice, and not go to the dining room. You go through the dining room. A lot of people went through the dining room. Didn't care. We kept it clear. Not a problem. Had a lot of computers in that room. It's great. I miss that. Chef's kitchen. Miss my chef's kitchen. Definitely. Not that much. I don't have to cook anymore. That's even better, I've decided. So one day, my buddy comes back from the doctor's. And he's like, "Oh, I just got back from the doctor." I'm like, "What'd you go to the doctor's for?" He said, "Well, I haven't been sleeping." I was like, "Oh no, that's terrible." What did the doctor say? Now he's pursuing his freaking PhD from MIT, right? Like, what did the doctor say? He said, "Oh, well," he said, "I have to stop studying in my room." And I'm looking at him like, "You've been studying in your room? Like, why? It's a huge house. There's plenty of space. Go sit out in the hall. There's plenty of room in the hall. It's a big house." He said, "Yeah, you can't do that." He said, The bedroom is only for sex and sleep." And I said, "Well, yeah, I thought everybody knew that, but whatever." He had to go to his doctor. He's the one that got the PhD. So you got to have that separation because you need the contrast to see. Because if you imprint the pattern of studying on your bed, because like I said, you probably could have put a chair in the back of that room or whatever, but couldn't have put a desk. You didn't need to. We had plenty of desks. More desks than people. You blend those 2 patterns together, they become blurred, chaos ensues, you can't sleep. Actually, real story, true story, bro. This creates chaos. It creates confusion, creates a loss of intimacy. You don't understand the quality of relationships. You think Sam and Frodo are gay. What other option is there? Loss of meaning, of course. Loss of identity, because you can't identify where you are in a pattern. Maybe you can't even identify patterns at all, and so you don't even think there's a place to be. Talk about domicile. What do you think causes all these things? That's what causes all these things. When you're not sensing the pattern, or you're sensing the pattern and you're refusing to cooperate with it, that's what causes it. If you can't take your skills and combine them with somebody else's skills, the 2 of you lose. Both of you lose. I don't know who that other person is. And maybe you don't either, but maybe you do. That's why cooperation is important. It makes you better. It makes them better. It makes the world better. It's the trifecta. Why be perfect when you can be tri-perfect? And like the fish in the aquarium, we cannot see the patterns we mimic very well, if at all. NPC, indeed. Most of our lives were NPCs. Sorry. But sometimes we can see patterns as such. And what happens when you try to mimic a higher pattern? We'll say without scaling it properly to where you are. You get slop, like all the new media fakery going on. Look at all the people trying to report on the news. Why are they doing that? They're trying to copy what CNN used to do before CNN became corrupt. Okay, but you're not $100 million plus company. Why do you expect to be able to do what CNN did again? Tim Pool tried, actually. He came pretty close. He does an excellent job, but still, you're not going to be able to copy a media company just because you have YouTube and broadcast power. Because that's not the pattern of a media company. That's just one aspect of a media company, the ability to broadcast. That high barrier to entry, by the way, prevents the amateurs from trying to do something poorly that they'll never be able to do anything but poorly. That's why they have tryouts for sports teams. It's not that hard. In sports, it's a little bit clearer, right? If you can't handle it, you'll get hurt. No one wants you to get hurt. So excluding you helps you, whether you realize it or feel it or not. Super important. Same is true in business. You building a bad business hurts the entire industry that you're in, and it hurts all your customers, and it probably burns you out as well. Patterns are important. You have to be able to be part of a pattern. If you just reject patterns, if you just rebel against all order or all hierarchy, you're going to destroy the world. And because you can't see what patterns you're in, you don't actually know what you're rebelling against. Sometimes you're rebelling against the thing that keeps you alive. And I've seen that wipe out quite a few people. And of course, you cannot know the so-called truth when you think it's consensus and decentralization of everything. Things are decentralized. There's no consensus building. And if there's no consensus building, there's no distributed intelligence that can authoritatively find the truth. Because the truth is bigger than you by definition. That's why you're seeking it outside of yourself. I mean, if you're not, you get different problems. We call you a narcissist and you're probably not watching, so it's fine. But if you can't get to consensus with others, you can't get access to distributed cognition and you can't find the truth. If you want to decentralize everything because you think you're spreading out the power, which you're absolutely not doing, by the way, just as much power as you in a centralized system as in a decentralized system, unfortunately. There's less power in the world. That won't last. Patterns are real. Then what's going to happen is everything's going to fall to chaos. And you have to pick one. Do you want your decentralization or do you want your institutions and authority? And without institutions, there's no electricity and there's no internet and you ain't buying computers because there's no stores and there ain't no one making computers. So I don't know. I'm a no on decentralization. I think it's kind of crappy. The result of this individualism frame, which is total lie, garbage, BS. Don't do that. There are no individuals. There have never been any individuals. There will never have been any individuals. There will never be any individuals. They're a person, and persons are connected to themselves, to other persons, and to nature. Period. That already happened to you, by the way. Not optional. Part of the pattern. What happens when a bunch of rebels who maybe grew up in wealthy families are into board games and they ascend into the halls of Hollywood? What do you think happens? Apparently there's a meme thing going around. I saw it on Critical Drinker today where they showed 4 different TV shows. These static scenes with the characters, or at least some of the characters from the TV show. And it was like, guess which one that's from, and they all look pretty much the same. And they all look exactly like the old D&D, Ren Fair, LARPing BS that was around in the 80s that I remember. Oops. That's what happens when a bunch of rebels who are into board games, into D&D, ascend into Hollywood. You get board game secondhand slop. AI slop's not the danger. Have you seen the shows Netflix is putting out? Did you see clips from, was it Rings of Power? AI slop? Huh, bring it. That's a massive improvement over this garbage. The thing is, scale has a pattern all its own. As things scale, different patterns become available. Old patterns change in implementation, even if the pattern remains intact. You can find the pattern of governance, of rule, of leadership in a family, and you can find it in your town hall or your city office or your state government. You don't have a meeting with the governor, you have a meeting with the lieutenant governor first. Not always, but usually. And that's the thing. Those patterns change in implementation. Maybe there's more people, even. That's pretty typical for scale. Kind of what scale means. You're dealing with more stuff. Got to have more management. But that pattern remains intact. Someone's got to be in charge. And just because they're in charge doesn't mean people will listen. I told you not to do that. Why didn't you listen to me? The CEO said we were going in this direction. Yeah, I ain't doing that. I've seen it 100 times. In both cases. I was never like that when I was young. I was super obedient. Had a lot of good it did me. Small companies have presidents. Large companies have CEOs and boards of directors. It's the same pattern of hierarchy of organization, just at a different scale. You don't need a CEO if you're a company with 50 people. Sorry. And if you don't see it, you need to. You need to see those types of scaling patterns. You need to understand there's not a lot of them. It's just a handful of basic patterns that explain everything in the world. If you have enough detail about implementation, which you probably don't and never will, but you could understand the pattern well enough to get out of its way or cooperate with it, which is really all you need to do. It doesn't need to be a big, complicated thing. So take a minute and reflect. Do you know the pattern of decay over time, the loss of momentum? The pattern of flattening the world? The pattern of incompetence rising? The pattern of something gaining momentum? What about the pattern of corruption or the pattern of evil increasing or the pattern of blindness? Well, you should recognize all of those patterns. You're living in them now. All right. That's enough terrorizing of my audience for one evening. Oh, no, it's not. I'll do it again. And that also gives you a taste of Sunday, in case you're wondering. I am going to do to you on Sunday what the Matrix did to you, just to prove the point. It's going to be lovely. You're going to love it. Yar, lots of yar. That doesn't look like yar, but I'll say yar anyway. Anselman, late supper, tea and toast here. Excellent. Sounds lovely. I know a sheep that is trying to be a better you. Why do I let you on my streams at all? Kick him out of the live stream. Ixnut sounds like a useful development. Bah. I love it. I love it. Anselman, regular traditional liturgy makes for worship decently and in order. Yeah. And makes room for personal devotion better than events that are dominated by the creativity of worship leaders. Yeah, exactly. Or the procedures and patterns that worship leaders put out. And that's part of the problem. Like you can be upset at the larger churches, especially the Catholic Church, all you want, but actually they're really good at containing the egos of the people that lead people, right? It's a very useful set of patterns. And it's far from perfect, but boy, is it a lot better than the alternative. Ixnon, like really, really jumbo shrimp. I don't really real jumbo shrimp. Yeah, really real. I heard that today and I didn't have my Barth bag with me. It drives me nuts. And so when we do nautical tautologies here, yes. Yes, we do. Thinger's thing with a lisp. Indeed. On God. Ingers be inging. Ansman, you know Inge? Lovely German lady. Inga. Yeah, Inga is a lovely German lady. That's true. Ixnon. Can you process opposition from outside it? But then you aren't participating. I would argue you're not participating in opposition either, but Anselman, observing patterns of behavior lets you know whom to trust. Well, I would say that there's no such thing as patterns of behavior. That actually came up earlier today. I think that observing what patterns people are acting out tells you whether or not you can trust them. And one of the patterns is when their behavior doesn't match their actions. And I'm not saying that's always bad. You have to know how it doesn't match. So it kind of matters. But it's sort of like the honeymooners, right? So that was pow, right to the moon, Alice. Well, he never hit his wife. So he was using that as an analogy to, talk about his feelings. Men tend to talk about their feelings in terms of actions. Weird. It's almost like we're action-oriented creatures or something. Anselman, I trust that spring will come again. Gets me through winter. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the seasons and the cycles, that pattern is very important. And being able to prepare for it too, right? That's sort of part of the magic. Sally Joe M. Cooper. In 30-some years, I'll write the book, The Worst Way to Earn $1 Million. How I Lost $1 Million is a great read. Actually, I think I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. So Taleb talks about this book, and I'm like, I got to have this book. Immediately, I was so into Taleb. I'm like, I definitely got to have this book. This sounds like a fascinating book. I was doing some finance stuff at the time, research. And I go to find the book and it's like $250 freaking dollars. I think it's a 95-page book, it's a tiny book. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But I'm me. And so I didn't give up. And what I found out was you can buy those books directly from the author, a signed copy for like $40. And it took a long time to find it. I searched for well over an hour. But when I found that, I'm like, well, why would I pay $200 for an unsigned copy from some nameless place when I can buy it for $40 directly from the author? He gets all the money and I get a signed copy. So I have a signed copy of that book. It's a great book too. How to Lose $1 Million is fantastic. Anselman, taking 30 years to do so? Why, yes. Yes, it is. Sally Joe. Then I'll make some poor youngsters edit it and they can write How to Edit Horrible Books by Creatives after. There we go. I don't know. Maybe I'll do it sooner, but I won't write the book sooner. You won't write the book at all if you don't know the difference between WRITE and RIGHT, because you're killing me, Sally. You're killing me. Sally Joe. And I also fully well could write the book anyway. Well, yes, I am sure you could. I might want stable assets more than $1 million, so it might be never in dollars. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Heckin-based and ink-pilled octopus. The guy with the best name is back, despite what some captains may think. Yeah, captains don't like octopi. They're very dangerous. Anselman, octopus spilled ink. Yeah, exactly. I'm here just to watch Yonga get scolded by Mark. Oh, well, that's fair. Anselman glass beats plastic every time. Sally Joe, erroneous patterns. Platonic patterns. No. Emergent patterns got brambles. Well, yeah. That's true. Yonga, the video on the Wachowski sisters masterpiece is going to be great. I certainly hope so. We'll see who gets the point. Anselman, I chose to watch this in my living room. I have been known to watch my bedroom. It's late here. I must get a better Friday night sleep pattern, hence missed the recent stream. Oh, fair enough, Anselman. They are recorded after all, so, and you can watch them on Rumble if you want. Man, I got to remember to schedule the Rumble Matrix video, because Rumble doesn't let you schedule things more than 24 hours in advance. So I'm like, what good is? I mean, they've got a whole calendar and it'll let you schedule it, but they cancel it. And I'm like, who wrote this software? They need a project manager. They didn't follow the pattern for good software. Software Design Patterns is a horrible book, by the way. Sally Joe, getting foundation down for yourself takes knowing where yourself begins and ends. Yep. Hard nowadays. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's very, very hard to know where you end and other things begin. Also, accepting the trade-offs. There's lots of trade-offs. Once you decide to do something, you've excluded so many other things you could do. People never appreciate that. Sally Joe, how mad people get when you do anything is difficult for me. Yeah, well, you're judging them. Don't judge people, Sally. Don't do anything. I told you, doing things in psyop. Is slop a new term on the scene? Yes. Giving an old word new meaning? I don't know. Can't keep up with the American slang. No, AI slop is a very, Timu slop came first, but yeah, AI slop is a very prescient problem. We just have too much, right? You have a flood and it's a slop. I don't know. Slop is an old word. It really is. It really is. Sally Joe, everything you would scrape off used plates and feed to pigs is slop. Yup. Slop has become more popular description in the past year, I think. Ixnan, you are right. It really has. Because people are very worried about AI for a lot of reasons, because unconsciously they know AIs, or subconsciously they know AI is taking their job. They're sure of it. And that's probably true because it's going to change the economy. So a lot of jobs are going to go away. Just predicting which ones is a little bit harder than people might think. Anselman, I like the word onomatopoeia. Yeah, onomatopoeia. Yeah, I can't even. It's too long. Sally Joe M. Cooper, digital slop seems timely. Yeah, well, Temu slop came first, but I did really well on Temu. I only had a couple things from Temu. I was like, oh no, this is terrible. Ixnon, I can write sometimes. Write yourself. Well, you can write your boat. I tell you would write a ship that way. You just wouldn't write about a ship that way. That's the difference. All right. I am exhausted. Why am I clicking on the wrong thing? Probably because I'm exhausted. So look, if you want to join in and ask me questions about patterns, specific or general, please feel free to do so. I will put the link in the little chats here, and then you'll be able to join if you wish. If not, we'll see what pattern I follow to get myself out of this live stream. because I can't do these all alone forever. Although the Matrix stuff, I guess I'm probably going to be alone for that. And I don't know how many hours that's going to be. I don't know how much material I'm going to cover. I still got to do the scene chart. I haven't done it yet. It's going to be a lot of work. I might actually get my graphics department to do some graphics for me too. I don't need them, but it might be fun. We'll see. I could draw up some slides maybe or something for the Matrix stuff. I don't know if I want to. I'll have to think more about that. Sally, Joe, M. Cooper, join ye cowards. Do it. Here. Somebody should join and ask me about patterns. Well, I hope this patterns video was all people wanted and more. I always go in a different direction from what people think, which is rather satisfying to me. Heckin' based and ink-pilled octopus. Are you sure you want to be an octopus? Very helpful pattern I follow when dealing with others. Most people are evil, few are good. No, most people are neutral. Very few are evil, and fewer still are good. But yeah, most people are just plain old neutral. They're just doing their thing. And if they're following good patterns and they're just doing their thing, everything will be fine. If they're following bad patterns, they're going to stray into evil, even though they're not evil. And that's really the problem. Everyone's running around redeeming people without being able to determine at all because they can't tell the difference. Good from evil. I mean, if you had friends and you found out later, I will say recently, that they're perfectly happy to cheer the death of somebody who did nothing wrong but talk to people on a college campus, then you weren't seeing the patterns, were you? You were missing a lot of information about those people that was probably there all along, but because you were constantly making excuses and redeeming them, you didn't see it. You didn't see it. And I'm on both sides of that issue too, which is kind of strange, but also the truth does not recognize two sides, I'm afraid. The truth is also not in the middle. It's above everything. It's above three things. That's always the confusion with patterns, I think, is that people think like you're in the pattern or you're out of the pattern. It's like, no, you can participate with the pattern, and one pattern can lead to another pattern. It's much harder to get into a pattern when you're stuck in chaos. That's why things like homelessness are so pernicious, or drug addiction, right? There's that Mark Lewis reciprocal narrowing concept that Dr. Vervaeke talks about. That is a side effect, right, of any addiction, is that reciprocal narrowing. But that means it's harder for you to get into other patterns, whereas reciprocal opening can occur once you're in a pattern. And that's all about momentum. Is your momentum down and narrow, or is it up and open? It's a good question. You should kind of determine that. And how do you change it? Well, again, the thing is, if you go to sleep regularly and you eat your meals on a regular basis, you'll be more likely not only to, recognize, we'll say, the daily patterns that you go through, your daily cycles, much like seasons, just a lot quicker. You'll also be able to get into other patterns using that pattern, right? The pattern of waking up every day at 6 a.m. or whatever it is, and doing these things almost ritualistically, although I'd argue they're not rituals. That'd be my argument. We don't make everything ritual. That's no good. Really helps you to be able to pick up other patterns. And the next thing you know, you have momentum. And once you have that momentum, you can move or change that momentum, right? You can deflect the momentum, you can divert the momentum, you can move, change the momentum, deflect it, right? And then bang, you're in another pattern, maybe a much larger pattern. And that's part of the issue, is that if you're not in any patterns, it's really hard to get into patterns. That's sort of the way some of the practices worked when we did them on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord server. If people would come in and they'd want to do the more advanced practice, and it wouldn't work for them because they didn't have a baseline pattern. So they didn't even see the pattern they were caught up in, and they couldn't participate because they didn't know how to be in a pattern. That's a set of skills that exaps. Unlike most of the other skills that people talk about, like skills from video games, which I will talk about in my video game video, that will come out while I'm on vacation. I think my next release is a Peterson video, and then maybe we'll do the video game video. I'll be in Ireland by that point. And then I have to record more videos because I'm behind, but hopefully I'll get to that maybe tomorrow, or I'll have to do one on Monday. It's a busy week, but I'll get something recorded. I'll get something recorded so that we have more videos so we can keep in a pattern of release. And that release pattern is important, not for the algorithm so much, although a little bit, but not as much as you think. The biggest channels actually that I watch do not release videos on a regular pattern. It's always funny when people say that. I'm like, really? Did you do the numbers? Did you bother? Did you do any research at all? Of course they didn't. They say dumb things. People say dumb things. They don't research. Ixnon, what about the Peugeot conversation video? Yes, I do have a conversation with Mathieu Peugeot, the author of The Language of Creation. Where is that book? I thought I had it out. I must have put it away. The author of Language Creation. I did talk to him. We are planning that release. He and I have agreed that release needs to happen after his other conversations. I think I'm the last person he talked to before he hibernates here for the winter. That has to be the last video released, and it has to come out a week after the last video. So I don't know when that will be. He has promised to update me as to when everyone's releasing, but it will be soon. I don't know if it will happen in October because I don't know where Ignacio's video is, because Ignacio's video I thought would be out by now, and the last time I checked it wasn't out. Ignacio, what's going on, bro? And I know he translates this into Spanish and stuff, so that might be what's taking so long. I don't know. And he's a busy guy doing Ignacio things. But yeah, I mean, it'll certainly be by November, I would think, mid-November at the outside. I just can't promise that I'll have it out, in the next 2 weeks. Now, it's possible I'll have it out in the next 2 weeks because the other two videos that we're waiting on might get released, tomorrow and then a week from tomorrow, but I don't know. But yeah, Mitchell sort of requested that I do that, and I thought it was a good idea anyway. That's what I was gonna do, although my brain was like, "Ooh, 3 days after Ignacio's video." I'm like, no, 3 days is not enough time. And Ignacio's not the only video, so not the only guy who's gonna release. So I had to be a little more careful about that. But I will. I have it. It's done. It's not edited yet either. I don't think. I'll have to talk to my editor. Unfortunately, my editor is also going to Ireland. So we're both busy at the same time. Very annoying. Very annoying. But she's paying, so that helps. We're gonna go to Cork and see castles. Awesome castles in Ireland. No relation to Castle Adams, who is not in Ireland. I don't know where he is. I should ping him, find out how he's doing. Yeah, I pinged him on some of my book stuff, and I didn't hear back from him. I expected he'd say something, but he didn't. That's all right. We'll find him before I leave. These patterns of like not releasing all of your likeness all at once, super important, and they're kind of everywhere, which is why I'm always confused that people don't see them. Castle Adams just tuned in to hear my name immediately. That's hysterical, dude. That is so funny. Yes, I was just mentioning that I had sent you something and about the Bookie Book project and hadn't heard back, and I found that odd, but I figured it was no big deal. It just occurred to me that that was an unusual pattern, not hearing from you. I didn't know what other patterns you were caught up in. Um, but and since I'm going to see castles, I had to mention your name anyway, so and now I can't think about castles without mentioning you because that's how it works. And Castle Adams, I'm still waiting to hear back from the Bookie Bookman, even though he promised. Starting to become a pattern, I fear. Oh yeah, Bookie Bookman is not the most reliable person. Yeah, but I sent you the Google Drive with some pictures, which I think is part of the package of stuff that we needed to prepare there. So I actually remembered that I'm a photographer and that I have resources because I have land and abilities, and I screwed around with lighting and tripods and all kinds of things, and then came to the conclusion I was doing that all wrong, and then went outside like a normal photographer. So yeah, so I got all that, and then there was some other. Well, I figured you have access to the art, to direct art, in case that's needed too. But yeah, I wanted to get those pictures off at least to you, and you decide how to get them to him, and we'll see what else we need, and how to move forward because I got to do that hopefully before I leave for Ireland because I fully intend not to take all my electronics with me, um, as this is an international trip, and I don't intend to have enough time to play around. And I'll just bring a Chromebook and call it a day. I wish I had my baby Chromebook because then I'd bring two Chromebooks, but I think I lost my baby Chromebook on one of my trips and I haven't seen it since. Or it could be buried in the office under tons of slop, which is our new word. The word for today is slop. 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 AI produces slop. Then so does Hollywood, including Disney. Apparently, even though I was long awaiting a third Tron movie, the third Tron movie is slop. And it's not even made by AI. So yeah, Castle Adams. I did see the pics. The outdoor ones were quite good, but I immediately forgot to message after I saw them. I do have the other art too. Yeah, I knew you had the other art. You're the one that got the art to him in the first place. So yeah, I don't know if we need the art and the pictures or just the pictures, or if those pictures are good, or I have more than just JPEGs. If they're really needed, I can upload the NEFs in case he can deal with NEFs, which are the native format for Nikons. Should be having lunch with Bookie Bookman by next Wednesday. Excellent. So I'll corner him by then if he doesn't email first. Excellent. Okay. Slop by 2025. Yes, Sally. Yes, slop indeed. The pattern of slop is everywhere, but it's the same as the pattern of the flood. And one of the things I really liked about language creation is, yeah, it's a book about symbolism, but symbolism, the thing that the way you know symbols are good, right, or the way you know which symbols go together are the ones that form viable, reasonable patterns. So it's the ability to sense patterns that gives you the ability to understand symbolism. You can't just take symbolism and cut it out from pattern and do stuff with it, because then you end up with weird things. If you want to see bad patterns, you can look at a lot of the writing today. Right. Oh, so there's a pattern with AI where ChatGPT, in particular, Claude doesn't do this, by the way. It uses M dash a lot, and there's these certain word patterns because AIs find patterns. It's word distance. It's a word distance from another word. It's actually really, for me, very easy to spot AI written stuff. It's like, oh, this is clearly AI because it's following a non-human pattern. It's very easy to understand. And you say, yeah, but it's trained on human patterns. No, it's trained on random patterns, mostly Reddit, by the way, which came out recently. It's like, well, yeah, you can kind of tell this is trained by Reddit data. There's a pattern. People that go on Reddit. I never went on Reddit. I mean, I've been on Reddit, but my buddies were like, wow, this is back when I lived in Brookline too, or something. It was a long ass time ago. They were like, you got to get on Reddit. You'd be great on Reddit. You'd rack up the points right away. People love your answers to. I was like, yeah, I ain't doing that. Oh yeah, I probably would own Reddit by now for sure because I'm really good at the things Reddit does. I just don't. I didn't want to do that. I had no interest whatsoever. Negative interest, in fact. This London fog tea that Sanjuro bought me very generously is absolutely delicious. I do miss Sanjuro. I hope he's doing all right. Heckin, based and ink-pilled Occupus literature would be much better if most modern writers would learn from the pattern of classic literature. Just my 2 cents. Well, there's lots of patterns in classic literature. That's sort of the problem, is that you can't necessarily learn from a pattern. Okay, most people can't. That's the honest and painful truth, is most people are just bad, right? And a lot of the problem that we see are people taking the pattern from the thing they know. I'll just pick on Jordan Peterson and John Vervaeke here, teaching, and they're applying it to things like how to solve problems in the world, teaching and research, to be fair to both of them. They're both good researchers. How do we apply this to politics? Well, you can't. Teaching is its own thing, and it has its own telos and its own ideas and its own hierarchy and its own structure, and that has no overlap, zero, with politics. And so when they talk about politics or political things, it's not great. It's not great at all, right? When you have the first Matrix movie and they try to copy the things that went well in the first Matrix movie, and they don't know what movie they actually made, or the studio pressured them, I don't know, I wasn't there, then you get the sequels. That's what you get. I'll go over that on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Navigating Patterns. Don't miss the Matrix video. And participate. Come in the live chat, and I want it to be interactive. I think, again, it would be deeply unfair for me to do what I'm going to do in that video, not in a live stream. That would, no. I mean, I could pull it off and not damage anybody, I think, but I still wouldn't want to do that. That's not cool. It would at least be impolite. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're going to have to join on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern and find out what I'm talking about. And I might let people join in and stuff. And, who knows? Maybe some miracle will happen and Jesse will show up and help me, because most of that is Jesse's work. Jesse's a lot of work, a real lot of work. We have extensive notes, and I'm probably not going to get to, well, I'm not going to get to half of them for sure, but I don't need to. I've structured it in such a way that I think I can. Can I close it out in 2 hours? Not with my mouth. Probably not. I'll try, but I think it's going to be a 3 or 4 hour thing. I'm probably going to have to rest long before I do it and stuff, because there's a lot to cover with that movie. And people get caught in these patterns. Sally Joe, lol, most people don't even know where the patterns are they're tripping over there. Yeah, or what patterns they're caught up in. If you tried to explain to Peterson that he's using a scientific frame to try to understand religion, he wouldn't see it. He wouldn't see it. Jonathan Peugeot has a great story about that in an interview he did like 4 months ago, I want to say. They're at the church, at the liturgy in the Orthodox Church, and Peterson's tapping away on his phone, and he nudges Jonathan. Jonathan's nervous. He's like, why is he, like, we're here doing, like, we're participating in the liturgy. Like, why are you, can't do both, right? Got it. Can't be a participant observer no matter what Dr. Vervaeke says. That's ridiculous. And he says, oh, I read this new thing for my book, and it's all about participation. And like the irony is just like really thick, right? Like, what do you mean? You're here not participating. Adam Dylan Major. Hey, yo. No, it's Yar. We established that earlier. You got to catch up with the chat, man. Yar. Ixnon, most people don't need to talk about policy. Right. Well, the pattern of doing things outside of your field, and then the pattern of using only the tools of your field to do the thing. Right. And forgetting that the pattern that got you into the field was things like research. Right. So when you don't research, say, the history of government, but then you're talking about whatever it is you think politics is, you've already screwed up. Like you're already done. Right. Or Daryl Cooper, who says, well, I'm not a historian, but I'm a researcher. And then he does no research at all on Churchill, not even enough to know what part of what he's saying is correct, instead making up a fantasy story that's actually wrong. There's no reason for that. Like, dude, do your research. It's not that hard. Like, it's like that stuff is whatever. Go read the microfiche. I did. Don't be lazy. It's lazy. I'm going to use the internet on the AI. No, you're not. That stuff's not in there. Maybe some bad summaries by some halfwit on Reddit's in there, but that ain't the same thing, kid. Hate to break it to you. And yeah, this pattern of people getting involved in things that they're not good at and not realizing it, or getting involved in things they're not prepared for and not realizing it. That's the pattern, one of the patterns we're stuck in. And people mimic. So they're mimicking that over and over again. And they're like, oh, Eric Weinstein's talking about politics and physics at the same time, and I can do that. And it's like, well, no, you actually can't. Or these other people have podcasts. I'm going to have a podcast. Okay. Maybe you suck at having a podcast. I'm going to interview people. Maybe you sucked as an interviewer. Why are you copying this pattern? And you get upset when the pattern doesn't work out. Well, yeah, because you suck at it and you're not participating with the pattern. You're participating with what you see, but you're not seeing the full pattern. You're only seeing part of it. And a lot of the reason why there's podcasts everywhere now is because it's a hobby for the rich people. No, really. This is a thing that's commonly pointed out about Candace Owens in her new show. Like, yeah, her husband's super wealthy and she's bored, so she's got something to do. Fair enough. Like, I agree. And people are just mimicking that pattern. And, Candace actually doesn't do a terrible job most of the time. And she makes mistakes like everybody else that I've ever met. Well, weird to point that out, I guess, but that's what people are doing. I guess everybody needs a hobby. If your only hobby is pointing out people's mistakes, well, I know who the bad guy is, and it's you. Grab a mirror. Sally Joe M. Cooper. The patterns of people's lives are like braided cords, inexplicably stronger when braided. Exactly. Stronger braided than 3 or 5 separate cords lined up unbraided. Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. Patterns are the thing that enable strength in parts. That's why patterns is why the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, because the sum doesn't have the quality of a pattern. Right? You can use a procedure to sum numbers, but it's not a pattern. And it wouldn't be fair to say, like, well, a pattern is the multiplication of those numbers together. No, that's not correct either. Perhaps some sort of fractal engagement might work, but no. And yes, just entropy is pulling everything. That is true, Sally. And this is where people get confused. Another pattern that people get stuck into is they will engage with the same type of content over and over again, namely somebody telling you something. So there's a channel called PsyOp Cinema or something, where Jesse watched a Matrix video and took a bunch of notes from that. I'm not going to go through that because I was like, holy macaroni. I think I actually saw their video too. It's easy to critique the Matrix because the Matrix is endless in its critiquability. unlike most other films, which are hardly endless. But The Matrix might be technically endless, in fact, and I'll go over why on Sunday. Um, at least hopefully I'll go over it. Whether or not I'll be able to make it understandable to you, it's up in the air. That's a cooperation between the two of us. That's another reason to do the live stream and not as a recorded video. The pattern of critique that everyone is, oh, look, the new media is just critique all day long of somebody else's material. Right. But that's reciprocally narrowing. That's AI slop, only without the AI. Just, oh, I'm going to critique Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. And it's like, bro, why don't you do some original material? Right. Why don't you tell somebody something new that you know that other people don't know, instead of just pointing out that there are other people and they're not perfect? Because I kind of think I already knew that one. Also, you're not perfect. And so that's going to get used against you at some point, and that ain't going to go well for you. Right. So, Sally Joe, tangling is not purposeful braiding. Right. Braiding is deliberate, and tangling is what happens when you neglect things. Braiding is not emergent. Exactly. It's not emergent. Human life is more, much more than a herd. Exactly. Exactly. Adam, Dylan, Major, fractals are complexity illusions. No, they're not. Fractals are scale invariant patterns with different implementations at different scales. There's no such thing as a complexity illusion. Things that happen from complexities are not illusions. The fact that you can't trace material cause indicates that they are, technically speaking, magic or supernatural, which is the correct scientific technical. These scientists go, well, I don't like the term supernatural. It's a scientific term that science uses. Like, are you dumb? I'm sorry, bad question. How dumb are you? Exactly. Because now I got to know. Now I'm just like, my curiosity is piqued. And that's the problem. Adam, Dylan, Major. What I mean is they look complex, but they can be described in very short ways. They are the representation of complexity throughout scale. I don't think they can be described at all, but different problem. Maybe you can give me an example and I can elucidate while understanding your point a bit better. What is your point, by the way? Because that would be helpful too. Sally Joe M. Cooper, the nuclear submarine is a nuclear caravan. It requires high levels of order to operate functionally. Yeah, exactly. And it is the high levels of order and that hierarchy that people are rejecting that is causing all the chaos in the world. If you reject hierarchy, you get chaos. Sorry, if you reject hierarchy, you cannot have order, right? And the illusion, which is the same as the trick of socialism, which I have a video about, is that because you can create order using a certain set of very simple tools, at least in theory, at one layer, doesn't mean that that order scales up because it exists at that one layer. That's not how that works. That's not scale invariance, right? You can't manage everything with a council. The reason why you get a board of directors when your company gets so large is because you need something to counterbalance the CEO. You need something above the CEO that isn't doing the CEO's job, because that would be redundant and foolish. It would also trap you in this perspective at this layer. It's looking at this layer and then interacting, just like the CEO is interacting with the C-suite below him and the C-suite below, right? So on and so forth, right? That's required. And in essence, it's an inverted funnel. So the board funnels down into the CEO and the CEO funnels out into the rest of the company. But it's a reciprocal up and down vertically reciprocal relationship for a reason. But without that order, it's no good. Adam, Dylan, Major, code, what kind of code? That describes rendering of a fractal can sometimes be incredibly short. Well, yeah, it is a shortcut. against the time that you would spend looking and marveling. Yeah, the thing is that because of fractal math, because of the way, I mean, if you read Benoit Mandelbrot's stuff, for example, which I have read quite a bit of, you realize there's a trade-off, right? The trade-off is, yes, it's a very simple formula, and recursion makes that formula do amazing things that are roughly unpredictable. But to use fractal math to say do mountains or something, it's a lot of code. It's just a lot less code by several orders of magnitude. I think it's 3 orders of magnitude less code than if you had to try to describe it, in particularly in real time, any other way. And so the problem becomes, if you wanted like a certain types of mountains or certain types of coastline or whatever fractal thing you want to display in a video game, for example, which one of the first uses for it was to display mountains. That is actually very hard to do. Generic mountains, pretty easy, but it takes a hell of a lot of tuning with fractal algorithms to get something that looks the way you want it to look. So the end implementation is simple, but that's because you've traded the cost of implementation time in the computer at runtime for testing time before the software is written. And so it's that trade-off that people don't actually understand, and then they go buy a book like Software Design Patterns, which I think I have that. It might be over there. I can't tell because everything is blue in one eye. I do this for you. It's why it doesn't work, because if you take a pattern out of the context in which it works, it doesn't necessarily work anymore. And especially when people grab patterns and they're not grabbing the whole pattern. So, and this is like the problem. So this happens in startups, right? Startup gets to a certain number of people, usually 50, by the way, right around that range. And then the person that ran the startup can no longer run the startup because they're A, not good at it. B, it requires a different set of skills all of a sudden, because things at scale require different skills. So they sell out so they can go start another startup. They become serial entrepreneurs or whatever. Fine, that's fine. They can self-fund their next project and do goofy things like that. It's a very common pattern in Silicon Valley, by the way, it's been going on for decades. You can look up serial entrepreneurs. That's not necessarily a bad thing. A few people can scale all the way, like Bill Gates did, right? You could argue that Mark Zuckerberg did, but those are extremely rare compared to the thousands or tens of thousands of businesses that open each year. Even just in tech, you get thousands of businesses opening every year. Most of them just fail and flame out immediately. I think it's 80% in the first year or something stupid, even with funding, because funding doesn't solve problems. It just creates new ones. If you don't understand what works about entrepreneurship, you're never going to be successful at it. If you don't understand that, my skill is working directly with small teams, therefore my company gets to 50 people, I need to hand it off to another management team and take a different role, you're going to run into problems. That's very common, by the way. Most startups fail at scale, as do most algorithms. Dun. This is why I was talking to Jacob a while back, and he was like, oh yeah, when Grok has or Twitter has outsourced or open sourced the Twitter ranking algorithm. And I'm like, what am I going to do with that? The ranking algorithm doesn't tell you anything without the size and scale and type of data. Like, understanding that data encoding would be nice. Because just because you have the ranking algorithm doesn't mean you have the ranking factors. And even if they outsource that, well, what does the feed look like? Because same algorithm, you put different feed in, you're going to get different thing out. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, the algorithm's not the magic. And in fact, if you know anything about the history of Google, their search algorithm being good was not the magic. The magic was how quickly they could index things and how much stuff they could store and how little it cost them to do that. So they were in data centers. Alta Vista would have these big it's called 4U, rack space machine stacked on top of it, 12U, right? Or 16U. So they have like 3 or 4 machines just to, do part of their search. Google is in the same data center, just below them, same network connection, same backbone, same everything, right? And they've got 1U servers, and each 1U server is doing 4 times as much work as any of those big 4U servers were. 4 times, and they were doing it faster on top of that. So that's double scaling is what happens, is you get this convergence, right? And that's, so basically Google indexed more of the internet than Alta Vista. That's what put Alta Vista out of business, not the algorithm. And they indexed more of the internet than Yahoo, and they did it so fast. Like they just, because their machines were super fast. Their algorithm, which you can, I mean, they white papered all of this. It's all available. You can go read it. I did. That algorithm is so fast, and the way they split this, and they never had 1U server. They'd have a bunch. And then on top of that, they fed them direct DC, so there were no AC power supplies in them, and they were specially cooled. And because they were using a quorum system, which is 3 or more servers have to agree, blah, blah, it's a consensus style algorithm. That's what made Google big, was more data faster, cheaper. So they had 12-volt batteries, car batteries, for their UPS system because they were feeding direct DC. So they used less power. They had more servers in the same amount of space, and each server outperformed by a factor of 12, I think, or maybe it's 16 by space, because there were 1U servers instead of 4U servers. And they ran cooler, and they had more of them, and they ran them cheaper. And it was cheaper to buy the damn things because 4U servers are all the money in the world. There's lots of steel there. And when one went down, nothing happened, and you could swap it out at your leisure. That's the huge thing about cloud, being able to swap machines out at leisure. Can't do that with classical algorithms. You have to change how your algorithm works. You might want to use a consensus algorithm. Hey, there's a white paper about that from Google. And that's how things like Hadoop happened. And you can look up Hadoop if you're not a computer geek like me who knows Hadoop. These are just based on the original Google white papers. The way things work at scale, though, is very, 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 very different. And that's the problem. That when you grab a piece of a pattern and you try to enact it, but it's only a piece, especially if you enact at a different scale and you don't know what implementation has to change, you're not going to get a good result, right? If you want to be an investigative reporter and run a 2 or 3 times weekly show, Candace, not a good pattern to try to, like, you chop things up in a weird way. I don't think it's going to work, right? I mean, it does not say lots of good work isn't going to come out of it and all that, sure, but you're creating a fundamental conflict. If you just cooperate and have somebody do a daily show and then you do the longer run show, or you split up the work a little bit more, so maybe you do some of the daily shows, they do some of the daily shows, and you do the longer research stuff, much better. More time to prepare, slow things down, right? I usually take time to prepare. I didn't take a lot of time to prepare this because I don't need to. But I did. I mean, I wrote almost a page of notes. Very different style than usual, but whatever. We are still experimenting with formats. Having a daily format or even a once a week format is different from having a twice monthly format. I was talking to we have a Telegram channel for the crypto guys that I talked to on Friday. Thank goodness we didn't have a call this Friday. I love George and his calls are great, but some of the people on there, I'm just like, what is wrong with your brain? One of them was calculating the cost to resurrect a biomass plant somewhere in, I think it's in Columbia actually, or just outside of Columbia, South Carolina. And he's like calculating the monthly numbers. And I'm like, I don't know this for sure because I'm not an energy expert, although I'm becoming one. I don't think they sell energy on a monthly schedule. Like, I don't think you get money every month like it's not like other businesses, right? There's an energy market and you have to sell into the market. And there's costs associated with being on the market. And then you want a time when your plant is running based on the market, right? Unless you're doing 24/7 energy production, in which case you need a utilities license and whatever. There's all kinds of caveats to this. And I was just looking at that going like, well, he's following like standard business procedure 101 for this, but I'm fairly sure that energy market doesn't work that way and you can't actually do the accounting that way. Now I might be wrong about that, but I'm fairly sure I'm not wrong about that. One of these, oh, I had Gustav's today. I should have asked him. I forgot to ask Gustav's when I saw him on the Discord. He wasn't there very long though. All right, Adam, Dylan, Major. Well, then, how do you become scalable? You don't become scalable. You exist at a scale. You're never getting out of that scale. Like, that's not going to happen. If all you plan for is your personal well-being. Yeah. Well, if you try to plan for your personal well-being, A, you're an idiot. And B, you're going to die. What you need to do is figure out how to participate and cooperate with others who will help you be better. Because that's really, like, at the end of the day, guys, like, that's the theme, right? The theme is that the world needs you. So be better. And also be better because the world needs you. Like, you can't fix the world until you fix yourself. But fixing yourself because you're part of the world also fixes the world. It's a magic thing. It's great. You don't have to worry about the war in Ukraine or what's going on in Israel this week or any of the wars in the continent of Africa that no one ever talks about because everyone sucks. You don't need to worry about any of that. You need to send missionaries to Africa. There's people you can help right down the street. Guarantee you that's true. You don't operate at scale. You were born into some kind of scale. If you were born wealthy, so you were born. You're going to see the world differently. People who are born poor. I mean, this is like, it's a trope in movies and stuff. It's true though, right? People that were born poor will always have certain mindsets because they're embedded in them from their birth. If you give them money, odds are they won't be able to keep it. If you send somebody as a diplomat who didn't grow up in the proper stratum of society, they won't do a good job. Now, there are exceptions to this. They're unbelievably rare. And you ain't one of them. Don't worry about it. If you were, you'd know, and then you'd be nodding along with me. This is the if you know, you know. If people don't realize, no. If you know, you know. In which case, you're agreeing with the person who's saying the harsh thing. Right. That's the problem that people have. They don't realize the degree to which this is true. So you don't need to scale up to being part of the government. There's no reason to do that. Now, maybe you can and maybe you should, but that doesn't mean you'll ever make it like to whatever level of government you want. Or you don't need to scale up from running a $100,000 a year profit company to running a $2 million a year profit company. There's no reason to do that. Most businesses don't scale. They operate at one scale, like laundromats, and it provides a great life for the family. Most businesses in the United States are family businesses, by the way, by far. In fact, small business employs the majority of the people in the United States. Now, small businesses are risky because they can go out of business. Families change hands. That's what happened to my buddy Ethan, right? And sometimes families sell. Sometimes people just get a different job. That happens. And that makes it rough because it's trade-offs all the way down. Or you work for a big corporation for 20 years and become a millionaire, even though you never made market rate. That can happen too. That's not a matter of scale. That's a matter of cooperating at the scale you're at. Because when you cooperate, when you participate in these patterns, you're more than you are by yourself. It's that simple. Like, that's what participating in a pattern does for you. And there are certain patterns you can't beat without getting beat up. So you can resist the patterns and everything's just going to get worse for you. And it won't become obvious in the beginning. And that's the problem. Adam, Dylan, Major, bless the U.S. or wherever you are for becoming better helps you as well as others in other places. It brings mental illness. I don't know about that. I mean, I think that everywhere you can be better, and what better means changes based on where you're at. Right. And if you think better correlates to, we'll say, economic factors, A, you're completely wrong. B, all the data points in the opposite direction. By the way, you can read something like Freakonomics. The Freakonomics books are wonderful. Read Freakonomics and Taleb. Great stuff. When you look around, and even like happiness indexes and stuff, poor people are happier than middle class people. Sorry, they just have more going on. They're running on a hamster wheel. And political, well, the least politically happy people at the moment seem to be the people in the United States, even though we have the calmest, safest, quietest, least strangling government in the history of the universe. I don't know what that's about, but people seem really wrapped up about something that's going extraordinarily well by historical standards. I don't know, even current ones. So, yeah, I mean, be better. And because again, if you're better, then you're better. Now, that has consequences, right? So some of the consequences, for example, I don't think people realize this. Some of the consequences are maybe being better means staying home and taking care of your sick aunt and not living out your dreams. I don't know. It might. It might be better if you were there taking care of your sick relative. And then if you go off and become financially successful or chase your dreams or even go off and have a family. Some people don't have families because they're busy taking care of their family. And their brothers and sisters have families instead. And maybe that's just how it has to be. And I only say maybe because that's definitely, obviously how it has to be. I don't know why that would be controversial, but I feel like everyone's dumb now. And I have to say all the stupid things that are obvious because no one's observing the world. Everyone's living in a fantasy in their head, probably because of video games, to be honest. Not only video games, academia, I tweeted this out earlier, a couple of days ago, on Twitter, right? A lot of our problems can be explained by people who lived primarily in books or in the realm of their fantasy theories, observing the world for the first time and going, oh my goodness, this is not working the way I thought it worked all along. It's like, well, yeah, where have you been, bro? But they didn't know. They were busy stuck in their heads. Maybe they were busy stuck in academia. Maybe they were just busy playing video games and listening to Destiny about how the world works, even though all Destiny ever does is say things that aren't true and then reason and logic from there. His logic is terrible anyway, but yeah, like if you don't notice that he just lies all the time and he relies on the lies to make the things that he say sound even coherent, because they're not coherent, because they're lies, then you didn't see the pattern and maybe you fell for some of his goofball arguments. That happened with I had a new kid on the server lately, interesting fellow, and he watched he likes Alex O'Connor. I said, you should watch my video. And he was like, oh my goodness, I never saw any of these things that he was doing. And how bad his arguments were. Like, well, yeah, I mean, it's this argument, not all of them or anything, right? I mean, he still likes the guy. Fine, fair enough. He's like, I never understood the sins of the father thing until you put it in genetic terms. Yeah, I do in that video. It's like, what are you, a lunatic? Even if you're a materialist, you should understand that concept, and people don't. And that's part of the problem. They don't see the pattern. They can't apply the pattern of materialism into non-material things or vice versa. Those patterns are there. They just look slightly different. Heckin, based, and ink-pilled octopus. That's one of the things I love about Middlemarch. What the hell is Middlemarch? Even after disappointments, the minor things you do matter as well, sometimes even more. Yes, well, that's the thing. It's the minor things that add up to the major things. The major things don't add up. They are additions of minor things. Just our misunderstanding and saying, well, this thing and this thing are the same. It's like, no, the thing that's larger is probably older, but has more parts, and those parts have qualities of relationships that don't exist the layer down. I don't know why that's confusing to people, but people are observing the world. They're reading it in books. Sally, Joe, M. Cooper, might be better to show up at stupid school board meeting instead of bitching on Facebook. It's possible. Yeah, showing up always helps. Adam, Dylan, Major, that's not my assumption. There are places where earning respect comes from bullying. Yeah, well, people would call it bullying. I've got questions about how people define bullying. Maybe you never saw pirates in tuxedos. They would never be in tuxedos by definition because they are rebels. That's what they are. Like we had this wonderful lantern tour in Camden, South Carolina, a couple of weeks ago. I talked about it. Yeah, they're all rebel. I mean, some of them come from the upper class and they just give it all up. They give up all their books to go swashbuckling. It's a hobby for them because they didn't want the tuxedo. They gave it up for the romanticism. CC Moole, I don't know how any of it works. Any of what? I'm pleasantly surprised most days. That's good. And of course, sometimes it really sucks. Yes, it does. And the thing is, if you find patterns that you can follow, that you can cooperate with, just go with it. You don't need to know the whole thing. You can just kind of see where it goes. A lot of things work out very unexpected ways. I was always very careful because I learned very young, don't overplan. I was always very careful with my planning. But recently, in the past couple of years, I've dropped my planning standards a lot more. And man, things work out in strange ways when you do that. It's weird. Like really, like what is happening? For a while, although this pattern hasn't persisted, I didn't think it would. I was watching Paul VanderKlay's Friday live streams, and then whatever topic I had already chosen would come up in his live stream, and I'd be able to add to my notes. And that was a fun pattern. I don't know how that worked. I don't care. It wasn't important. It worked. I knew when it stopped working, before it stopped working. I said, oh, this is the last time that'll work. And I was right. So lucky me. But you can get a sense for patterns and when they begin and end, as long as you know when you begin and end. And that's really important. I mean, that's one of the most important factors about patterns is you need to know when the pattern's enforced, where it is in the hierarchy, what layer it operates at, what the implementation looks like. And if you have good grounding for yourself, you'll always be able to recognize these patterns and go, oh, this pattern is going to last for so long and then it's going to stop. And then this new pattern is going to, you can do that. Most people can do that. And maybe you can know what pattern you're caught up in. And maybe you can get out of that pattern. Like that's the way out of addiction is to notice that you're addicted. If you don't notice you're addicted, you're not getting out. Except by accident. And some people get out by accident. It's just a really sucky way to do it. It's extremely rare. Most people get out by death. So, like two of my uncles and one of my cousins. Horrible. He was so young. But it's easy to get stuck in that pattern. Why do you think people collapse at raves? Because they forget to drink water. Why? Because they're busy taking ecstasy. They're stuck in a pattern of partying. Oh, we're going to work all week and party all weekend. Great pattern. People don't even know they're stuck in it. Were you ever close with drug addicts? They don't even know when they take their drugs. They have no idea. I think they haven't taken drugs when they have. Oh, you were on coke last Saturday. No, I wasn't. Yeah, you definitely were. No. I write down everything in my journal. No, you don't. Lynn Lavoie. Lynn, it's good to see you. Careful of the Ouroboros. Exactly. The Ouroboros is sort of one of the symbols of an unhealthy pattern, right? The snake eating its tail. But it's also true that we are stuck in cycles that recur. But not all cycles that recur are snakes eating their tail, right? Cyclical should be like this. It should be sine waves, not circles. the fact that you can view something as a circle does not make it a circle. Maybe you can only ever view circles. Maybe the reason why people are, saying things like, well, I'm not a dualist, but, and then list exactly 2 items, which drives me absolutely nuts because it's clear they don't understand what they're saying when they do that. Clearly, right? Clearly, they're a little on the toot side. Might be because they can't think any more sophisticated. They might have spread their sophistication out. There might be a flood of literacy and a lack of comprehension due to that flood, which I have a live stream on, by the way. Lynn, how would you tell the difference? Well, look, cyclicality looks different. So you can say every year summer comes around, but every summer looks different. And the fact that you say start counting at summer, most of us start counting at spring, doesn't really matter though. The summer does not eat the summer because it's summer, fall, winter, spring. Now you may not have 4, you may have 3, you may only have 2, but you don't have 1. The Ouroboros is one snake eating one thing, and that one thing is itself. This is why when they start talking about the one and the many, the one and the many, the one and the many, and they're really the same thing, I'm like, now you've just gotten to Ouroboros. You've gotten into self-referential definitions. Self-reference is a hint that you're wrong about everything. And I do mean that technically. You are wrong about everything. If you derive anything from a self-reference, it is wrong. It can never be made correct, ever. You need to start from the right place or you can't get anywhere. And that's really the problem. You know the difference by the change. The Ouroboros doesn't change. It just continually consumes itself to rebuild itself, to consume itself. It's entirely self-referential. You know summer from the fact that there is something that isn't summer, and that something doesn't eat summer, and it doesn't create summer. Summer stands alone, and there's a transition into and out of it. It's not some tight circle constricting in on itself or expanding out on itself because somehow it can do that, even though that makes no sense. It certainly doesn't sit still, even if it doesn't change size. Adam, Dylan, major pattern emergence. I don't think patterns emerge can be prevented. I don't know about that. You're going to have to give me an example. So much so that it leads to every local citizen needing a tour guide. I don't know why a citizen needs a tour. And everybody needs guides, but those guides could be oral tradition. Don't have to be other people. Other people help. That's for sure. They can give you. Other people can see you in ways you can't see yourself ever. Kind of handy. I mean, I don't like it when they do that because they tell me something I don't want to hear, but that's good because that's how you learn. If you're not hearing from people who tell you things you don't want to hear, you're not learning anything at all, and probably just pack it up. You're falling behind. Entropy is eating you. Sam Harris. Oh, I got rid of Twitter, so I didn't have to listen to all the people who disagreed with me. Good job, dumbass. Well done. Oh, it's lovely. Hear from all these people in my community that pay me money, that like me and tell me good things about myself. That's great. That's great. That's why you don't care who has dead babies in their basement. Lovely. Anybody who defends stuff like that is the same kind of person who'll cheer at the death of somebody who is merely speaking at the university. Sorry, it was a pattern that you could see. You just refuse to believe it. And that's part of the problem, is people are refusing to believe what's plain in front of their face. And the Jonathan Pageaus of the world are sort of having their come to Jesus, if you will, moment. Oh, these people were never the good guys. That is correct. They were never the good guys. Now they'll say, no, 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 this is this thing that happened. No, no, it's not recent. It's just you kept making excuses and excuses and excuses. And now you cross some threshold in your brain and you're starting to see clearly. And the next thing you know, you start to believe all the things about how many teachers are having inappropriate relationships with grammar school children and how many trans people are committing sexual crimes and how many elites in the government are flying around and doing terrible things with children. Now you're starting to believe that's been that way for a very long time, my friend. People were warning you. You can snot, stick up your nose at Pizzagate all day long, buddy. But I got news for you about how evidence works. Heckin-based and ink-pilled octopus. Best arguments against scientists. Well, look, science has its problems when it's not properly seeded. And if they adopt the Immanuel Kant playbook, which they shouldn't because he was wrong, obviously, which is really weird. Like, how obvious? I just looked at it and went, well, this is dumb. Why would anybody listen to anything else the guy has to say? People are stupid. And he wrote a book, and books are sacred. Yeah. Scientism, I mean, I struggled with this due to my education. Education is evil. Just don't worry about it. Like, say, law sometimes is not based on any principles. No, law is based on principles. You can't learn more laws with a minimum time spent. That's true if they're laws of man, because man just is imperfect and creates stupid laws just to create laws sometimes. A society that lacks a myth ends up without patterns. No, the patterns are there whether you like it or not, and you will end up in those patterns. So, for example, if you believe you do not have a religion, one will be provided to you without your knowledge or consent. Why? Because the pattern of religion, which I have a video on, by the way, is inevitable. You will enact that pattern without realizing it. You will be a BLM member washing feet because that happened multiple times. It's a little weird. Okay, it's a lot weird. Okay, it's inexplicably strange. Yes, unless you understand patterns and that those patterns will be acted out. The problem is, without myths and stories, you can't tell the good patterns from the bad patterns. That's what things like fairy tales do. But that doesn't mean just exposing people to myths and stories is going to work, because many people can't engage because they don't have a properly formed poetic way of informing the world. See the knowledge engine model. When you don't have that, those stories won't make any sense to you anyway. So even if you hand them those stories and they're interested enough that it keeps their attention and they engage, they will not understand the morals, with an S, of the story. And they don't have to understand all the morals of the story. But like children, because they are technically immature, I have a live stream about maturity too. They won't get a lesson out of it. You'll have to instill that lesson into them over and over again over time. And then maybe they will see enough of the pattern to either avoid or embrace. Well, this is a good pattern. This is a bad pattern. That's why fairy tales exist. That's why we used to tell them to children, despite the fact that most fairy tales are horrifying, absolutely horrifying. And that's the problem. If you don't understand that patterns are the thing that we recognize as reality, which is not to say reality consists only of patterns. It certainly does not. It also consists of potential and chaos, which is where you draw from the potential to get order. As Jordan Peterson says, weird. I knew that long before I ever heard of Jordan Peterson, but whatever. I'm glad he found it and popularized it. And then you're going to have a problem. You need to understand these things. And you need to strengthen your poetic way of informing the world so that you can tell these good patterns from bad patterns. I'm going to try to do some videos. These are not going to be done before I go to Ireland, obviously, but try to do some videos on showing you basic patterns. So one of them that I ran into, Annie Crawford posted, and this radical orthodoxy. Okay. Radical orthodoxy is what we call a contradiction in terms. It's impossibility. Of course, the guy who is doing it, really shady. Right. It sounds right. Of course it does. Anything open-ended like that cannot have any stable, consistent meaning, you have a very good chance, because you want to cooperate with other people and they sound smart. And after all, they broadcast to me and I saw it, right? Oh, I must engage with this communication. That's how I think, by the way, but almost everybody does, right? They go, oh, that sounds right. Of course it does, because it doesn't make any sense. So it sounds sensible to you because you made it make sense to you. The sense you made out of it isn't necessarily, and almost certainly isn't, the sense anybody else made out of it. That's the beauty of contradictions. It's like, well, yeah, contradictions are great. I mean, you can say your sense for the really real, as John Vervaeke seems to love to do, and everybody will nod because everybody knows what you're talking about. That is technically correct, that everybody knows what you're talking about. They just don't know the same thing. And then everyone goes, well, I don't understand why we all can't get along, because you retards are using abstract language like that is portable across large groups of people, but is unstable and refers to any random thing. That's why you're abusing the language. You abuse the language, we can't communicate anymore. We can't communicate anymore. It goes to violence and people get shot. Words are violence. You guys didn't see any of this coming, did you? I did. I talked about it for years. I said, well, they said words are violence. Someone's going to get shot for talking. What option do you have? Did you think that was going to unfold another way? What lunacy are you living in? That was the most obvious hint of all time. But people don't get them because they don't get the patterns. Ixnat. Also, why children want to hear stories repeatedly. Right, they want to hear the stories repeatedly because you have told them the story. You have given that story attention, whether you just bought them the book or somebody else bought the book or you read the story to them. You should read stories to your children, right? They want to extract that information out because there's got to be something valuable there, because the only valuable thing is attention. Time, energy, attention. The value is in the attention. Where you manifest the value is the time and energy. They want that from you. They know you're trying to give them that thing. So they want to hear it over and over and over. And when you hear things over and over and over, procedurally, the procedure of reading the book the same way over and over and over, maybe with slightly different inflection at different points for the same character, right? Or sorry, slightly different inflection at the same points for the same character, right? Maybe that level of contrast is what the child needs to start to understand the patterns. You recognize patterns by getting into them with procedures. The best set of procedures is manners. We will be doing stuff on manners. Do not worry. Adam, Dylan, Major, you don't know the world, right? You can't know much more than a tiny sliver of the world. You haven't spent a single day as a citizen of a country where generational pileup and keep obfuscating the past. Well, I don't know about that. Like, we're losing native speakers every decade. I don't know that that matters. I mean, that's been going on. That pattern's really old. Languages change a lot. The bigger problem is that we're smoothing out the languages, right? We're Tower of Babbling everything. We're not keeping a 2 or 3 tier language system. So Aramaic versus Koine Greek versus the other type of Greek, right, for an entire region, but not universally, because in Greece, probably didn't speak Aramaic, right? At least a lot of parts of Greece. And then that corresponds roughly, not entirely, but roughly, to the class system in the country. We're trying to equalize everything and get rid of classes, and that's destroying everything because classes and hierarchy are the same thing. Like, classism is a form of hierarchy. If you get rid of it by trying to make everybody equal, you just destroy everything. And that's why we have a flood and we have chaos. You bring the barriers down that make things unequal and keep the inequalities shaped properly, formed properly, so that they can cooperate in patterns. What you get is a flood. Of course you do. And now you get more potential, quote, for everybody, but you don't. Because what happens is everybody gets a YouTube channel. So where you could have had a nice 25-person outfit making YouTube content 24/7, even, because you could do that with 25 people pretty easily, you get 25 YouTube channels and no one can keep track of them. They have different release schedules. It doesn't work. No one wants to cooperate. And it's a crying shame because, man, if I had somebody who could produce this and somebody who could, let's say, edit my videos with cuts, and somebody I could bounce more ideas off of in terms of how do I present these ideas, that'd be amazing. It'd be amazing if we had other people doing my material differently for their age group or for whatever. That would be amazing. I would love that. Even though, in theory, maybe I can see, we'll say, 4 or 5 different ways to present the monologue that I gave today, or really many of my other monologues, not all of them, to different audiences. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the research to do that. I won't be good with those other audiences. I present this way because this works for me and my audience as best as I can align the two. That's not great. It's the best that I can do, but it's not great. It would be great if we had other people from different audiences doing the same content over and over again, or shaping my content so that I did it differently. We don't have that. And that's the problem. When people don't want to cooperate, when they don't want to get in the pattern and increase the pattern, the more people in the pattern, the more powerful, in some sense, the pattern is. Because patterns are coherent time, energy, and attention over vast space and time. Right? Much, much greater than you by yourself, because there's lots of people involved. The more directed time, energy, attention you have, the more power there is. That's my definition of power. I don't want to say it's a perfect definition, but it probably is. Worked on it my whole freaking life. And with one possible exception, I'm probably the oldest person here. So there you go. Those patterns are important. They matter. They are and have momentum, and they're the way you gather momentum. Adam, Dylan Major, on a single channel, you'd have trouble maintaining a core audience. Yeah, like the Daily What? Oh, no. Huh. Yeah, like Pewdie. Never mind. The best you could do is draw others to channels like yours so you can collaborate. No, that's completely wrong. It's the opposite of the model that works. This decentralization is killing the world. Please stop killing the world. Do you know why I don't want you to kill the world? Because we need the world. Like, we live in the world. And the world needs you. So be better. The world needs you to be better. And if you be better, the world will be better. Not that hard. And stop rebelling and stop coming up with emergent systems and ways of cooperation that aren't patterns that we know work, like the lamestream media. Problem with the mainstream media, I mean, it worked for decades and decades and decades and decades. What changed? Corruption. That's what changed. But we didn't revivify it. Instead, we let it die so that we could all have the internet and this stupid YouTube thing. Well, everything's worse now. Like, just by any possible measure, everything's worse. All the bad things about the mainstream media are worse now. Every single one of them. And the way to right the ship is not clear even to me. Like, oh, I don't know about that. It would be nice if we had one channel and a bunch of people and some help where we had really good, slick editors who did good lighting and good sound and all that, right? And then they collaborate to do one show, right? Or maybe the editor does all the shows, works on all the shows, and then different content creators come out and do their content. This pattern is basically the pattern of PBS. Public Broadcasting System was wonderful back in the day. It also became corrupted, by the way. Long story. My mother was pissed when they had a whole lawsuit around this woman who found out she was Jewish. And so she switched her will at the last minute and they sued to get all the money. And I was like, you're supposed to be a taxpayer funded organization. Like, why are you going to court to steal someone's estate? Seems like a pattern that, man, had we nipped that in the bud, my life would be different. But no, nobody wants to fight corruption. Everybody wants to come up with new solutions to problems that we already had better solutions for to begin with. I don't know why. Everybody wants to pretend like they can outdo Plato and Aristotle. I don't know why. They all seem retarded. CT Mool, thanks to viewers like you. Thank you. Someone else watched PBS. Some of those old episodes, in particular from like the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Oh man, don't watch Frontline though. Holy macaroni, man. You watch Frontline and you're like, wait, this was what? And people knew, and it was on TV, and people watched. And the most important, because PBS out of Boston, baby, primarily. Don't watch the New York shows. They're terrible. Those were still the movers and shakers of the country. And they were watching that. And they just weren't like, I mean, they did do things about it, but the way they approach problems is very different from the way you and I would approach the same problem, because they see different things. They're making different trade-offs. They understand things at a different scale. And so, you know, quote Buckaroo Banzai, don't pull on that string. You don't know what it's attached to. Right. Conservatives are don't pull on that string. Right. One of the strings they won't pull on is you won't find conservatives online talking to you like this ever. Never going to happen. I know true conservatives. They know better than to do this. They know why it doesn't work, and they know that they don't want to do it. And they know that if they were successful at it, that's even more dangerous. And if you don't know why, you haven't seen the historical pattern of such things. True conservatives would never try to appeal to the masses because they know that's a mistake. They're aware of the dangers. They understood that the French Revolution was bad, really bad, really, really, really horrifically bad. It's not like the French Revolution happened and the starvation was solved. That didn't happen. That's why they welcomed Napoleon and made him emperor. Because he fixed the problem, not the revolution. Oops. Didn't see that pattern, did you? It's very powerful when you see patterns, especially in history. Very powerful. If you want to see historical patterns, watch all the history playlist with Adam, who owes me one video. He owed me one video before he got married. Obviously, we couldn't do that. Maybe I'll never do another video with the poor guy. I don't know. He might be super busy having a million babies if he has his way. Heckin based and ink-pilled octopus. True conservatives wear crowns. No, not really. And multiple estates across our country. Not really. But true conservatives are busy. A lot of them do things like farming so that you can eat. They don't have time to be online. Although I knew a very interesting character out of South Dakota, actually, although it's one of those East River folk. Sally will tell you. East River. And he was on Clubhouse all the time. And I think he does YouTube stuff occasionally. He has a few YouTube videos. Yeah, he's like online in his tractor though. He's doing 12-hour days. My buddy Jefferson used to call him the hardest working man on Clubhouse. Totally true. Probably completely accurate. He didn't have any spare time. He's an interesting guy, really smart too, really smart. And he was busy running things, or there were a core group of them running things, like crop reports from around the world, and they just talk about too much rain here, these seeds, all kinds of cool things. I learned all kinds of stuff listening to them. I probably forgot half of it because it's not relevant to anything I do. I'm never going to farm at that scale. Thank goodness for them. I'm glad they do it. Otherwise, I couldn't eat. Neither could you. Adam, Dylan Major, I have trouble understanding who's that competing we you would call the world that deserves my contribution because there are many worlds. No, there's one world. If you split up that one world, you will perceive it as many worlds, and don't do that because there's no reason to. I wouldn't call it a competing we because the world is not made up only of persons, and therefore it is not strictly a we. Right? The world is made up of all sorts of things, like persons, like nature, like patterns. There's a bunch of things you can, let's say, have direct access, although imperfect. Be a little fair to the idiot philosophers who make idiotic statements that don't matter. Imperfect access to, let's say, the material things. But you also have access intuitively, in some cases that's usually what people call it, to the ethereal or non-material things that are part of the world. And you can cooperate with patterns. You can cooperate with ethereal things in the world. It's not that hard. When you cooperate with those things, you increase yourself and you make the world a better place in doing so. Now, you probably have to give something up for that. You have to sacrifice. It's kind of self-sacrificial. And it may be painful because you have to burn off the dead wood, as Jordan Peterson says. But also you become better because you're not going to keep everything you have and be better at the same time. Some of the things you have are keeping you from being better. That's the problem. That's where everybody freaks out. Like, well, I don't want to go back. I don't want to lose anything that I have. Well, that's too bad. That's going to happen to you anyway because we all die. So I don't know why people are caught up in that. Little dumb, I guess. Happens. Sally, Joe, M. Cooper. Start with being nice to your waitresses, baristas. I love those people. They are so awesome because they like just come and bring me things. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I find it amazing. Yeah, I'm just like, this is great that people will do. And for money, well, that's easy. Right? That's easy. Adam and Dylan, Major, I'm trying my best. Yeah, do it with others. Let other people help you. Join an accountability group. Come on the Market Wisdom Discord server. We'll help you. That's all we do all day anyway. Sally, Joe, M. Cooper. Walk your neighborhood. Pick up trash. Yeah. Don't start with Congress. Exactly. Clean your room, then clean your street. Clean your room, then clean the outside of your dwelling, right? Pick up trash when you're walking down the street, even if it's not in your neighborhood. Go volunteer. There's all kinds of volunteer groups out there. Like people just volunteer to go clean parks for no apparent reason. I wouldn't do that, but and some of the people that volunteer do so under court order. Those are the interesting ones. You never know who you're going to meet. Yeah, there's lots of ways to participate with others. And the problem is you have to inconvenience yourself to do it. I mean, how bad can it be? It's not like you're trying to get Sally to do art for you for free. Do you know how much I have to give up just to deal with Sally? Sally knows and she delights in it. It's even worse. That's the thing. Like, what are you going to do? You have to give up your time, energy, and attention somewhere. If you're only using it for yourself, you're not going to get better. You're losing to entropy. And entropy is not going away. The pattern of degradation, the pattern of decay, the pattern of things corrupting over time is not going to improve. your life. Sally Joe, dude, how hard is it to give art away? I know, huh? Poor Sally. Heckin' based and ink-pilled octopus, chip your door dasher, maybe. Depends how good they are. I often watch them try to get to the house, and it's not that hard. I'm actually on kind of a main road. There's such a thing out here. Um, and yeah, some of the routes they take, I'm like, I don't know where you're going, but now my food's cold and I'm not happy. But yeah, I'd rather go out to a restaurant and actually interact with humans for like long periods of time because your waiter will come multiple times and talk to you and, you know, much better. Getting up that momentum, getting into that practice. If you're going to eat, if you're going to spend too much on food anyway, you might as well also get some sociability training out of it, right? Practice manners and all that stuff. I'm going to do stuff on manners, I promise. Maybe we'll get a manners game going. We'll see. Maybe even another board game for manners. We got to get the first board game out first, but whatever. All this stuff is in the pipeline. If we can get somebody else out of their pattern, we might make more progress more quickly. But we're stuck with what we got. Cooperating with people is hard and frustrating, and everything takes longer. And no matter how long you calculate, it always takes longer. That's okay. But at the end of the day, you want to engage in a way that keeps you engaging and gets you more engagement over time. Denise, good to see you. Just woke up. Okay, Denise. Etiquette, good luck. Well, we will be doing stuff on etiquette. I got to go to Ireland first and enjoy a wedding and see my good friend Adam again because I haven't seen him in quite a while, and meet his lovely new bride and see his cool apartment and all that stuff and experience Ireland because I haven't, and see the castles. And then make fun of Castle for having the name Castle and me seeing castles. It's because that's happening. Sally Joe M. Cooper. Expensive coffee is about renting a nice place to hang out for 120 minutes if you do it right. Exactly. Exactly. You're just renting space, and the coffee's kind of a bonus. Ixnon. Sometimes you get good help. Sometimes you get me. That's true. You're not holding us up that much on the game actually, but we got to get the 2 books published, the book and the workbook, the accompanying workbook, and then we can start to like refocus on the game. But yeah, part of that's on me. Yeah. So it's not all you. I'm glad actually. See, like I said, things are weird, right? Like you're taking your time and we're stuck anyway. So we're not out anything. But yeah, hopefully you'll get that game tested up and ready for us soon. Denise, Irish have nice insult etiquette. That's true. Funnier than Southern saying bless your heart. Well, yeah, the Irish are a special breed. Boston, Southie baby, Southie. Sally Joe M. Cooper. He gets the help he can afford. Ignon is stuck with us. I know. Someday I'll win the lottery, or maybe I'll get the patent sold. These guys aren't even getting back to me. I'm like, what the hell, guys? And then I can afford better help, and you guys will be screwed. Ha ha. I'll ditch you people so fast, make your head spin. Adam, Dylan Major. Oh, I shouldn't have said that out loud. So long as I have enough sleep, well, you got to get a lot of sleep. I have a sleep document, by the way. You can get most out of me. Oh, maybe. But I value that others want compensation. Well, maybe not. So I'm not ready to devalue others' contribution. Look, value is a strange thing. I mean, Sally talks to Manuel still, and so do I. I still talk to Sally. I don't know if there's any value being derived there, but actually contributes quite a bit to the live streams. Sometimes without knowing it, usually just without remembering. But whatever. It works for me. I win. I'm not sad. Yeah, value is a strange thing because and unless you're trained in sleeping regularly, right, and correctly, hopefully you don't have an illness like I do that causes you to fall asleep in the afternoon sometimes. That training allows you to understand discipline, right? And practice discipline. That's what allows you to focus. And it's the focus, time, energy, attention that is power. And so the better you are at focusing, the more power you have. And you have to start with power over yourself. That's the thing you're always going to have the most control over anyway. So that's the best power to have, right? And then you can build and grow from there with your momentum. And how do you get momentum? Patterns. That's how you get momentum. Not that hard. Sally, Joe, M. Cooper, you can pay people who care, but you can't pay them to care. Right? You can pay caring people, but you can't pay people to care. Someone said that once. I don't remember who. Yeah, me either, Sally. It's all a jumble. It's all a jumble. It's so sad that we don't remember these things. Who knows who said what? It's a mystery. I remember being on Clubhouse once, and somebody was like, "Mark, you're always quoting, these other people and blah 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 blah, but we want to hear what you have to say." And I'm like, "Well, I am the one saying it, but I was trying to give you guys a sense of authority so that whatever." So I gave up saying who quoted things and where I got the ideas from and whose ideas they were originally, and things went better on Clubhouse from that point forward. People always talk about give everybody credit, but nobody actually wants to do that in a world of rebellion. In the world I grew up in, it's the opposite, right? But in the world of rebellion, they just want to hear your story. But actually, that personal, private perspective story, especially when it's wrapped up in success, is the way you get psyoped into, oh, I don't know, joining the National Socialist Party. Because you mimic that success that you see. This is also why conservatives don't like to transmit their ideas to the masses. They're very cognizant of that. Maybe a little too cognizant, to be fair, but I don't think there's been a conservative. Well, I mean, there was Mitt Romney, but a real conservative since William F. Buckley on TV. They're still out there. They're just not on TV because there are problems with that. There are people that think, what's his name? Alvador, I think, won that debate. And I'm just like, whatever. I guess if you're that dumb, you're that dumb. And the problem is rebellion is against nothing. Well, rebellion has no endpoint because it has no identity. It's an identification against. Mitt Romney? Yeah, Mitt Romney was pretty conservative, actually, because he was a Mormon. Gore Vidal, that's it. Thanks. Brain is not there. I am working on that Matrix thing, and it's just like eating my brain. Yeah, Gore Vidal did not win any debate ever because he's retarded and he's a monkey. So he couldn't win a debate if his life depended on it. Sally, Joe, M. Cooper. My ideas are like brambles in public parks will improve dress code. Yes. Bring back Brambles campaign. We should do it. Bring back the prickly brambles, and that will force people to form themselves in such a way to avoid the brambles, which will make them better because they won't just go wherever they want. They'll go where something's better for them. Formation is really important. No one's talking about it, and I can't really get anybody to do that because people are all dumb and they're caught up in the thing of the moment. Mostly they're just grabbing words from people smarter than them and smashing them together in inappropriate ways. Like, oh, the thing passed, the 4 P's of knowing. I'm like, oh, could we just first fix the 4 P's of knowing and then move past it? I don't know. Or you could understand it first before you say we've moved past it or this is the thing that's past it. Like, you don't even understand it. I don't know what to tell you. First of all, if you think there's 4 P's of knowing, you're already wrong. I don't know. Look at the Knowledge Engine video. You'll figure it out, maybe. Sally, Joe, M. Cooper. I was hoping you would disagree so I could go straight into air piracy. Yeah, unfortunately, I knew that, and I don't want to talk to you about your stupid air piracy idea because it's dumb. But just for the live stream, it would have been primordial. It's fine. Fine. Are you happy now? I didn't play your stupid games. You get to piss me off by using the word I don't like. God, that just, oh my God. I just freaking unbelievable. Like, now I have to calm down. primordial. They don't even know where they got that from. They have no idea. Denise, no, Mitt Romney was completely nuts and no, he went nuts and dangerous afterwards as the result of engaging publicly, Denise. Very clearly, when he was running Massachusetts, he did a great job of running the state. Is a neocon. No, he was not a neocon. And also fringe Mormon. Yeah, well, fair enough. And their cult underneath it, Massachusetts Bain Capital. Well, look, Bain Capital did a lot of good for the world. Bain Capital saved Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know what you're talking about. You're from Massachusetts. Like, come on now. You're not going to hate on donkeys, are you? And if you're going to hate on donkeys, I'll go to Corpus Christi and knock on doors until I find you. I'm just saying, I know people from Southie. If I find you, I can tell them where you are, Denise. Be careful. Denise will understand. Sally Joe M. Cooper, we've got to have hobbies, Mark. Yeah, your hobby shouldn't be torturing me. Bain Capital owns Aspen Educational. Look, a lot of the bad things that Bain Capital did happened as the result of Mitt Romney stepping down. Like, for example, when Bain Capital bought companies, when Mitt Romney ran it, he refused to lay anybody off or fire any employees. That was his one rule. And they did not violate that rule until he left. He was not back then a bad person. But he got corrupted by the Democrats. Man, when the Democrats went after him for women in binders, that broke him. That split him right into pieces because he thought they were principled. And this is the problem with conservatives. They still think those people are playing by the rules. And they don't want to do the right thing, which doesn't seem like the right thing because you got to be pretty harsh with people like that to fix them. Like, you have to, forming people sucks. If you have children, you'll know because you have to yell at them and it breaks your heart. You have to give them spankings and it breaks your heart, but you have to. It's not like one smooth, happy, conflictless set of debates that just get us all on the same. No, you got to crack down on people or they'll shoot you while you're talking at a university. I'm sorry, but like, what do you want me to do? Absolutely. They will. They did. They have. Figure it out. It's not that hard. History, baby. Ixnon. Air pirates are cool. No, they're not. You have no idea what he did in Massachusetts. No, I do. No, I just told you what he did. I mean, he actually came up with a healthcare model that was pretty freaking good for the state of Massachusetts. Actually saved $500 million a year and everybody got healthcare. And it was a really good plan until the Democrats got a hold of it and ruined it all. Lynn Lavoie, Dunkin' Donuts are 100% better than Krispy Kremes. I don't know about that. Their stuffed donuts are better. Krispy Kreme stuffed donuts are a waste of time. Don't even go there. Krispy Kremes are pretty yummy. Denise, they already know me, and I used to buy donuts from Joe's and Coffee Subway Station, which is the small donut guy Duncan bought out with the original recipe. Yeah, I know that. But Duncan was sinking, and Bain Capital invested and didn't lay anybody off because Romney said we're not doing that. It would have made them grow faster and all that. And Romney was like, no, we don't lay people off at Bain Capital. Sorry. And he did that with a lot of companies, actually. And he was a jerk in Belmont, but to his neighbors and stuff. But it was because he was conservative. He was very conservative. He didn't like noise on Sunday near his house. And he would call the cops on you. Yeah. Indeed, Dunkin' Donuts is one good thing that came out of Massachusetts. Well, no, there's 3 good things that came out of Massachusetts, Denise. You, me, and Dunkin' Donuts. See? Thank goodness we got out of Massachusetts. And thank goodness Dunkin' Donuts is not confined to Massachusetts. I have like 3 or 4 of them around me down here and, outside of Columbia. Fantastic. It's like a brave new world. It's so wonderful. And yeah, Mitt wasn't perfect. He did a lot of bad things, but as governor, he did fantastic. Man, that state was great under him as governor. I mean, we could always argue that before that, it was in pretty good shape. And I mean, Weld did a good job too, but Romney did a really good job. But he got broken. I mean, that women in binders thing just totally screwed him up mentally. And he was never the same after that. And he went completely off the rails. And I'm not surprised. Like, that'll break you in two when you're trying to do a good thing and you get punished for it, as Jordan Peterson says. You want to see somebody get punished for doing a good thing? Watch Mitt Romney in that campaign get slaughtered for doing the women in binders thing. Just watch that. You'll get it real quick. There's a good way to corrupt somebody pretty freaking quickly. And man, did he corrupt you. He went completely off the rails. I went after him on Facebook for a while. I was like, no, dude, like you're completely nuts. And that's treason. And yeah. But the hardcore this is why conservatives aren't online. And not in that way. I mean, they'll use online, but they'll use Facebook Marketplace, which, Facebook monetize that. They made a fortune, but conservatives use that, not liberals. Liberals are scumbags. They don't use anything. They're no good in the world. Sorry. Don't be that way. Adam Dylan Major, I've never seen donuts large enough you could fit a basketball. Well, do you have to? Dunkin' Donuts is good. Krispy Kreme is also good. Just not their stuffed donuts are terrible. Absolutely atrociously terrible. But fresh Krispy Kreme donuts, pretty damn good. Also, more sugar than you should intake in a month in a single donut. But hey, trade-offs, baby. Trade-offs. It's all about the trade-offs. And Dunkin' Donuts, man, they've got that magical coffee. The number of people I met that tried to reproduce Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and they never could. And no one could figure it out. Some people thought it was the water. I, being a good conspiracy theorist, I was like, no, they line the cups with a special chemical and they don't tell anybody. And people like that idea for whatever stupid reason. They're like, yeah, you're right. That's definitely what they do. I'm like, okay. If that's how you want to make sense of the world, you go right ahead. Sally Joe, M. Cooper, salt, probably salt. I don't know what they did. People, very smart people, like very good, very smart people that I know, have tried literally for decades to try to reproduce that coffee and can't do it. I don't know anybody who's honestly claimed that they've done it, in fact. So we don't know. It's like a great mystery in New England as to why that coffee tastes the way it does and why no one can. I mean, you can buy their beans. People have taken beans out of the damn store that they would normally put in the machine. It's not like they're selling different beans. And it's hard to know what they're doing, but they're doing something that no one can reproduce. And maybe that's changed since I left. I mean, I've been out of Massachusetts for almost 10 years now, thank goodness. Although I wish I had left a lot sooner. I could have left 5 years sooner. That would have been fine. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to kind of figure out whether or not that's just people like in a different mindset and that's why the coffee tastes different. And when you do it at home, you're in a different environment and that does affect the flavor. People don't like to know that, but this is part of like the world is super connected and context determines meaning. And if you change the context, you can and often do change the meaning. And that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. Adam, Dylan Major, non-standard grinders, all these things have been thought of. It's hard to know if they've like, has anybody actually bought one of their grinders from them? It could be, or it could be context. Who knows? Sally Joe M. Cooper, is repetition the best way to notice patterns? Well, it can help give you a sense for patterns. That's why you do it to children who are not mature. And to be fair, a lot of people aren't mature. You can see the pattern of immaturity if you look. Like, don't go by age, go by what people do. You shall know them by their fruits. Somebody should have written that down over the handy. Nah, nobody would have read it. And if they did, they wouldn't understand it anyway. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the problems, is that repetition is the way not only to contrast and see patterns, because you get into one. That's what repetition is. It's a sort of a flat sort of pattern. But once that's how you get in. So you can see them, you can get into them, and then you can get into more and more complex patterns over time. And yeah, it's important. Adam Dylan Major, sometimes just time you grind can affect. Oh, sure, of course, because you affect the size of the beans. Believe me, these people are really smart. They're like top grade computer engineers or top grade engineers in general, and they've thought of all this. They've for years tried to reproduce it. Maybe they've succeeded since. I don't know. Good stuff, Ninja. Denise. Third time is a charm. It's a basic pattern recognition 101. Exactly. 3 times is a pattern. Twice doesn't mean anything. It's an opposition. Binary thinking is bad. Yon God, my favorite pattern is first come, first serve, and finders, keepers, losers, research. Those are principles, but sure, they follow a pattern. Luckily, 2 was enough, and good stuff, Ninja, last time around. There you go. Yeah. This is why when people say like, oh, we need to re-engage with the fairy tales and tell better stories and stuff, I'm like, kind of. You're not wrong, but that might be too many steps, too far, too fast. People really don't have the way of understanding stories. You got to remember, we're living in a world not only where people think that the allegory of the cave by Plato has anything to do with individualism, because apparently they have low reading comprehension or they didn't read it. And I have a video on that, of course, Lies of Plato's Cave. Plato specifically says that's not what this is about at all, because that's not possible. That's what he says. I have all the references in that video. But we're also living in a world where people joke about the fact that 1984 by George Orwell was not a manual on how to conduct society. That's kind of a hint. And by hint, I mean incontrovertible proof that reading or books or news stories is not the way. Obviously, that won't work. Obviously, we have all these stories and we've had them all along. Something else is also going horribly wrong. C.S. Lewis is not your guy. Tolkien is not your guy. I'm not saying they are important. I'm not saying people shouldn't read them. I'm not saying they're not useful. I'm saying they ain't going to fix this. They've been here all along and we still got here. Obviously, they aren't the way out. Something else is going on, something deeper, something at a lower layer of analysis. Something about the poetic way of informing the world. See the knowledge engine model. Maybe you'll understand it from that. Sally, Joe, M. Cooper, proclamations of who you are necessarily who you are, no matter how loud you think about it. I assume you mean not necessarily. R. Yeah, I think too, when you don't understand generational patterns because you've been taught a chopped up version of history that doesn't contain a thread, you don't understand momentum. And you look at things like the Rothschilds owning banking as a, tyrannical conspiracy or something, when in fact, well, someone had to. And if it wasn't the Rothschilds, it'd be someone else. And you'd just be complaining about a different name. But momentum is real and important. And sometimes being the first one there, although not often, sometimes being the first one there gives you the momentum to succeed. But most often, in most environments, being the first one there means you get wiped out. That's why when people seek novelty and they're like, I want to do something completely new, I'm like, are you nuts? Do you want to fail? Because the odds of failure when you do something new are so high, it's not even worth thinking about. It's like, whatever. And nobody gets that. Sally Joe messed that up because she's tired. Shocking. Absolutely not seeing life as multi-generational engagement is huge. Right. When you don't see that, when you're not part of that, when you have a bunch of people who aren't transferring their wealth before they die, you're breaking a chain of momentum. And if you're redirecting that momentum towards, say, living your best life when you're retired or something stupid, I mean, you're just destroying the world. If you want to be mad at the boomers or whatever for that, that's fine and fair. But like, that's not their fault. It's not that they're not participating in a pattern of evil or something, because they are. It's that you can't, like, that doesn't give you what you need to fix it. And it's not going to help to point it out and make enemies of the people who hold your momentum. You still need them to transfer that momentum. Denise, momentum. Yes, that is the thing in patterns. Some have momentum. That's how you get momentum. You go back and listen to the monologue and tell me all the places you think I'm wrong, Denise. That would actually be helpful, because you actually might see it. Some of these other people, of course, won't. Sally Joe, you can lean in or out of a family pattern, right? But you're going to be affected by the things that came before you. Exactly. Original sin is real. Sins of the father are real. Genetic inheritance is real, right? And they're all the same thing, by the way. Adam, Dylan Major, just design a good plot with hints to your story and you end up confusing everyone. Right. Well, also, look, stories happen in a context. The less context you need to understand a story, the more allegorical or mythic it is, technically speaking. Although I have some arguments about what mythos means, and maybe the word fiction didn't do us any favors by having that word, because I think that's probably the case. This is a psyop by the science people to differentiate their stuff and say it's better. But the more abstract it is, like a fairy tale, right? They don't use real characters in fairy tales. So you can see the pattern and go, oh, if you substitute these characters for these people, aha, now I can predict what's going to happen. Right. That's how fairy tales work. On the other hand, if you're too far away in time and context from the people you're talking to, you have a different set of problems. That's why you need to retell these fairy tales over and over again over generations. Yawn God, some patterns disappear when you bring them into attention. Well, they can. That's part of the problem, is everybody wants to bring things into attention instead of just doing the thing. This is why fruits are important. You can just do the thing. You don't need to worry about the patterns. You can just be part of them without trying to see them. It's fine. And if other people say you're stuck on a pattern like drug addiction, it's a big one, or alcoholism, maybe you should listen to them, because you can't see the patterns you're in clearly. You're a fish in an aquarium. Ixnon, complaining about boomers instead of bad patterns seems to be not helping. Yeah, it's making things worse. That's the real problem, is talking about generations just makes everything worse. If you split the world up into generations, you're splitting the world up. Like, dissection kills things. Don't do that. This isn't that hard. It shouldn't be hard to understand either. I'm always confused at this. Generations will end up being arbitrary in all cases. Sally, some things don't need to be put on an altar. Right. They need to be cherished, and too much display kills many things. Right. Forbidden knowledge is important. That's kind of one of the driving factors in Plato's Republic, is around forbidden knowledge and how to deal with it. So I don't know where these people, like, I don't know what book they're reading. They say they read the Republic, and I'm like, I think you missed a bunch of stuff. First of all, it's a hysterical book. Hysterically funny. Second of all, like, the driving factors of the book are really important, and no one ever talks about them. And they don't like those themes, and they recast the allegory of the chaos of individualistic whatever. And Lantern Jack, who I love, everybody check out Lantern Jack. He's got great stuff. He's a great guy. He's really smart. And he's super well read. Even he screwed up and like used almost a dictionary definition of resurrection to describe something. And when I asked him, like, why didn't you use the word resurrection? He's like, well, what are you like, appealing to some Christian bubble? I'm like, no, I'm appealing to the dictionary, bro. Like, you really screwed that one up. Like, I know you know Greek, but like, do you know English? Because you use the dictionary definition of resurrection instead of just saying resurrection. I don't know. Like, that seemed a little weird to me. That's all. Like, I wasn't trying to appeal to Christianity. I don't claim to be a Christian or anything. So I wouldn't make that appeal. I'd be like, what? Who cares about that? But I do kind of care about the language because that is one of the things that ties us together. And one of the problems with the United States is we no longer have received pronunciation, which, interestingly enough, I heard about. I believe it was from Critical Drinker. I was like, oh yeah, a lot of people know about this. Very funny. We've lost all that though. We've lost all that. Adam Dillon Major. Yeah, beware of smuggling things that you shouldn't know about into your consciousness. Relevance realization? Yeah, don't pay attention to that. Whatever. We need the subconscious and unconscious back. These guys, I've got a degree in psychology and you never talk about the unconscious? Ever? Really? Did you not learn about it? Did you skip over Freud and Jung? Like, that's the most important part of psychology, guys. Like, why wouldn't you mention the most important part? Why are you coming up with woo to explain things that Freud and Jung had a better format for? I don't understand. You're not smarter than them. What are you doing? At least not with respect to that. Anyway, the pattern of this live stream is that I'm going to close it down because I'm tired and nobody loves me anymore and they don't want to visit, which is fine. That's okay. Look, 2 weeks, no live streams. I'll be in Ireland and then recovering from Ireland and stuff. So sorry. I might do a live stream while I'm in Ireland. That would depend on a lot of things that probably aren't going to happen, but you never know. You never know what's possible. I don't know what's possible. That's why I'm not telling you what's possible, because I don't know. I can't tell you things I don't know. So I really appreciate everyone's engagement. Tell your friends, threaten your enemies, do whatever it takes, trying to grow the channel. We're going to get the book thing out soon. That is definitely coming, so you'll be able to order some. And thank you, Lynn. I will certainly have a good trip. I am sure I'm going to have the best trip ever. And yeah, Sally Jo says, take care of yourself out there. Yeah, the world needs you. And so you should be better. And if you be better, then the world gets better. So why not? Be better because the world needs you. That should be enough. Everybody, have a great next couple of weeks. I will see you when I get back. I will figure out what the topic will be then. Although if you leave a comment on this video, I will consider whatever topics you propose. And I have TSA pre, bro. I've always had TSA pre. I'm not going through that bullshit scanner. I know all about that scam. TSA pre is cheap. Everybody should get it. Also, you can go through the airport a lot quicker. And you have to take off your shoes. And I never did have to take off my shoes, which was nice. Take care of yourself and each other. And have a lovely, lovely rest of October. Be good.